ongoing communication with Superintendent McLean, and we have been clear that we need to work together to find solutions to the numerous and urgent matters we are faced with. Recently, TAC reached out to our trustees in hopes of establishing a positive and collaborative working relationship, as we believe this will help us more efficiently find solutions and create plans for addressing school issues. We are thankful for the willingness of our school board and willingness to meet with us, and we look forward to continuing to work together.
K4, board member reports, individual and committees. Trustee Mendoza-Morris?
Yes. This last time frame, I participated at the CARE Foundation meeting where we discussed fundraising possibilities. We will be participating in the Winter Wonderland that's going to take place in December 2nd. So if you see the CARE Foundation Apple, please come by and say hello. And I also did Big 5 or completed the Masters in Governance course, and 5 was the last one, along with another trustee, and we graduated from that. And the last one was Community Relationships and Advocacy. And that is the end of my report.
Trustee Austin?
I just obviously like to say thanks to all the coaches, athletic directors, they're both here tonight, and Dr. Boyle for helping. I wasn't at all sports banquet high school anyhow, but if you can say anything about how it was, I think it went well. At some point, hopefully, we can introduce. I know the comment said about dinner, but that takes volunteers, and we're obviously lacking volunteers, so hopefully we get back to that point. But all the students are excited for winter sports. It's good to see those sports starting up and being able to have a full season, unlike last year. Other than that, as far as my involvement, Measure H, and I know he's not here to talk, but we'll talk about that. Just been attending those meetings and having pretty local meetings about continuing to spend and all the issues. I know Superintendent McLean probably went to the district office, which should have been blown up years ago. Just having continued problems and see one thing after another, but it's unfortunately cheaper to continue to keep fixing it than having money for new buildings is not feasible. I know Preston will add to that. As well as working on somewhat of a mini master plan. We have long-range goals, but some shorter-term goals, because we know the community is not going to support anytime in the near future another bond. So we need to come up with creative ways of funding to try and keep conversation continuing in the district, which is always challenging. But we have some great consultants that are helping find money, especially for the TK area, where we need to be actually building some business. That's all I have.
Trustee Addison?
I was at the city school subcommittee meeting, and we talked about the new idea for a teen center that's been going on, of course, Girls Club. We talked about coordinating with the city on the south property as well, as we, and I'll touch back on that when I talk about Measure H. That's right beside the new development that's going in at the south end of town. We also talked about coordinating with the city, the new bus drop-off area that would be at Washington Middle School, right in front of the gym. The city's developing with the hospital, the area between there and the boulevard. And we're going to have on our side a new drop-off area for buses, so we're really improve the middle school. And we're working with the city on the parts of that overlap. Also, we're renewing, updating our cooperative agreement with the state. That's where we've done things like collaborated with them pool, and other items of mutual interest. The school resource officer MOU is done, and there'll be some funding that's coming from the school to help pay for that position, as well as funding from the city. And we'll be, I think we'll be very soon looking for a person to fill that position, which would be a hard thing to do, as also, the community pool is, it looks like we're gonna have funding from other sources other than the city and school for coverage for that, which will, with the new heating system, will extend cover. So it's, looks like they've identified what type of. I also did Measure H. Biggest thing right now is trying to get that to go. But repairing portables, so I met, we met about it on Tuesday. Today, and I'm meeting tomorrow. On the south field, we've got consultants that are working on addressing the seasonal watershed just through there. It connects to the watershed and riparian corridor on the Baumgartner development, and that kind of riparian zone will probably continue through our property where the seasonal watershed exists. The consultants are reviewing that, working with agencies like Fish and Game to see what exactly our buildable envelopes will be on that property. And then they'll work with CDE, the Education Department, to determine that, yes, these are the building envelopes that the district needs. We have a master's plan. We've done several things that are in our master plan over the last few years with bond money. So now we need to basically just go through and check off what we've done and think about new needs, like we've got TK students that we're gonna need to be housing more and more each year over the next couple of years until we essentially have a new cohort, so roughly 100 students, and we will need somewhere to put it. That's all I report.
We wanted to double check that the light shading is working.
Is it? I don't know if there's any image, and I'm not sure the sound is clear, you guys.
We're working on it.
Working on it? Do you want us
The
to
image,
take-
there's an
Okay,
Pull your mics
if
closer.
you
It's our
want
mic.
us to take a break, just like for a minute, so that you can do it
Catch
without
up with you?
pressure, would you
That'd
like
prob-
us to do that?
That'd
Yes,
probably be good.
okay,
Yeah.
so we can just
take a break right
take
now.
a
Need a
brief
motion or
recess.
just do it?
Just take a 5-minute recess, let us know. So we'll just sit here
Everybody,
until
you're
7:15.
We're still learning.
It's my phone right here.
All right, let's see if this is coming through on the live feed. Should be a 40-second delay, roughly. What? No, it hasn't. We're working on it. We just said we're working on it just now. It's like more. Oh, I'm behind probably. One more test on the live feed. See, I just said it. Let's see if I come through in just a second. This should be clear when I say it right into the microphone. I'm not hearing anything. One more test on the live feed. There it is. Okay.
Jackie, can you turn yours on and try it?
Where's Jackie?
Can you hear me now?
We should. Well, it'll be up there in just a minute. There's a little bit of a delay.
We're good.
Okay.
We are good.
Okay, it's 7:15. We'll come back. Turn your mics back on. We'll come back from our brief recess. So for my report, I'm that trustee. I completed MIG 5. All MIGs. That's my second time. Second time. I attended the October SARB meeting, which is the Student Attendance Review Board, and there's a procedure to when you get to that point. It's kind of the final stage. Unfortunately, the students that we had scheduled did not attend, but we have another SARB meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We have a SARB meeting scheduled for tomorrow that we have 2 students scheduled to attend. So hopefully we have a better turnout. I attended the DLAC meeting for Trustee Mendoza-Torres. We had a great turnout, I thought, and there was a lot of positive parent engagement and interaction and good conversation, and I know we're having a presentation on it tonight, so we can go into that. And that is my report. K5, Superintendent.
Principals, I'm thinking tonight I'll let you speak to your bullets, just for a change of pace. So you won't need the clicker, but I do. I think I do. Okay. So many things. All right. Is it on? It's on. Okay. All right. So just in terms of our whole district, we have started our social science adoption process. The committee is made up of staff from all the campuses. Nicole Odell held the first meeting with staff I think about a week and a half ago, and started by setting the vision for the curriculum adoption. At the next meeting, they'll start to select they'll look at curriculum and select possible publishers, and then have presentations and determine if who we will work with and pilot, because we'll pick more than one and work with it for a bit and make a determination about the best of the choices. There is a community input part of any curriculum adoption, so the community will get to review and comment on it, and the board approves it before it gets adopted. As Trustee Garrison mentioned, we had our first DLAC meeting recently. Thanks again, Dr. Odell facilitated. This was our first meeting of the year, so we talked about the purpose and the role of the committee. It was well attended. We had it here. Dinner was served. We did a really interesting activity on the vision with parents and got great feedback. And I'll be sending that out and sharing it with the community in our next community letter because I think it's really profound to hear and see parent voice. Last week, we also had writers' workshop training for teachers at Jefferson that spanned November 7th and 8th, so 2 days. And there was a late afternoon session where teachers worked with the facilitator and unpacked curricular resources. We had a fun visit to the CHOPS Teen Center. A group of community leaders and Nicole Odell and I went to visit to see what this well-established teen center is doing because we really want to do something fantastic with the Boys and Girls Club, and we're not waiting for perfection. You know, we're getting started anyway, but we want to continue to build something really special. I also want to mention that the Boys and Girls Club are running a Thanksgiving week camp on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week, and it's free to everyone. I will be sending out the information on that as well in the letter that I hope will go out tomorrow. And then today, all the sites sent home COVID test kits. As everyone remembers, the holidays sometimes tend to bring a little uptick. And this year we have many different, we have the flu, we have RSV, as well as COVID. So we'll also distribute tests before winter break for students to use before they come back. So I'm going to let the principals.
And I'm going to ask that you stand at the podium to
Yep.
be heard on the microphone.
Good evening.
Hi.
Trying to stay safe today. We have a lot going on at all of our schools, but at Jefferson, we had the Ned Mindset came. It was an assembly, yo-yos. The kids had a blast with it, and it's the power of yet was the main theme. We also continue to develop our PBIS kind of activities. Specifically, we had our second PBIS monthly celebration, and community involvement has been great. And what I meant by that, or what we meant by that, was the office staff at Jefferson, I must say, are completely awesome. And like, for example, this week, we have community members helping feeding all of our staff during the conference week. And they also have donated things to the school for some of our PBIS activities, specifically certificates, because we have like students are selected from each class and each grade level, and based on their behavior, there are prizes in the community, free drinks, things like that, and it's really awesome and kind of involves the community, and Ms. Craig has kind of done all the work for that, and I appreciate it. TK and Kindergarten Fall Carnival took place, and then we had an amazing PTA family movie night, and the attendance was absolutely awesome, packed house, and they watched a movie on the new AV system and had a blast. As I mentioned, this week is Parent-Teacher Conference Week. We also have a book fair being managed by the PTA that's happening as well. We're continuing to develop our instructional strategies, and I'm just amazed that we're where we are at this time of the year. There is an uptick, and with health things going on, we had 110 students absent on Monday, and we're still, you can hear the cough in the crowd, so we're being mindful of that and continuing to follow through our conference week and finish off the fall strong. So, thank you.
Sorry I sprung it on you. I know.
Well, that's okay. I didn't know I was going to. 3 times is a little bit overload, but yeah. Well, my mask actually doesn't come off. It hasn't. It's actually taped on now. So we had parent teacher conferences last week, and I think they went well. I think the parents were satisfied with the information and the reports that they had with the teachers, so I think they were well organized. I think we're gonna, a lot of talk came up about student-led conferences, and I know that some of them were student-led, but, we'll come together as a staff, and I look forward to having the leadership team talk about how we can get better and do. I know they were good conferences, but, I think we're going to have that conversation, how we can make them better. We had a Reflections Art Night. It was last Monday, and we had, I think, 6 participants, and we had 2 winners, and those are going to go to a state competition. Really great artwork. The boys basketball and girls volleyball, we've already talked a little bit about. They're playing at this moment, or maybe they're just finishing up. So that's exciting. I already talked about the turkey run. And the Sunshine Winter events are being planned now. That's our Sunshine Committee at school. And they're going to do, I don't know if we can call it Secret Santa anymore. I think that we're debating if that's the term that we can still use. But we're doing something like that. We're also doing a potato party. And we're doing some other events for winter. I don't know if you've all had a potato party before, but you're welcome to come. We'll invite you. So it's basically, you just bake potatoes and you bring all the fixings and you sit around and have potatoes. So, okay.
Hello, good evening. Before I start our school highlight, I do want to address the question that Trustee Axel asked about the winter banquet, and we did have a very nice banquet. Our athletes showed up, but something that we tried to do last year was bring food back, and as Trustee Axel already commented, it takes a lot of volunteers, and it fell through because we just didn't have enough volunteers. We will continue to try and bring the food back and make it a more of a family, very much a family affair. But I am just very grateful that we are having these banquets again. And so it's wonderful to see the athletes, the scholar athletes, the student athletes get up and get their awards and hear the wonderful accolades that are spoken about them. For Cloverdale High School, as Trustee Axel already mentioned, we are in full swing for our sports. And what's really exciting, I mean, for not a great reason, but we are going to have our first ever Sandy Mac tournament that the girls basketball team will be putting on. That'll be the first weekend in December. And then the McMillan tournament, which I think is in its 41st year, right? Is that right? I can't remember. Is it that long? It will be December 8th through the 10th. I might have just aged him. I don't think I should have. It will be December 8th through the 10th for boys basketball. So these are really exciting times for the teams to hold these tournaments, and they are fundraisers. So the money for these tournaments do go directly to those teams. The winter play, it's a series of one-act plays, and as Mr. Dobbins said, he's going to try and throw a funny one in there because he's doing the lottery. And if you've ever seen the lottery, you know we need something. We need a little joy in that one too. So he's gonna add one more act play in that. FFA did their first tri-tip dinner, and it was incredibly successful. They sold out. I think they sold 75 tri-tips. Having been at other high schools that have tri-tip dinner, I will tell you this is probably one of the best dinners I've ever had, and at the best cost. And it really did serve 4 people. But Lions Club and so many other people, Ace Hardware, a bakery, what was it, Franco?
Franco-American.
Yeah, Franco. Everybody contributed, and it really was an amazing event. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to go to many college visits in the last couple of years. We were able to have a trip to SRJC last week. 32 seniors attended. Those 32 seniors were all interested in SRJC, and at that time they were enrolled. They're enrolled in Counseling 270. We've got some dual enrollment going on, so we're really excited about that. And I'm going to highlight JEH when I talk about the SIPSA, but I do want us to highlight particularly that the teacher, Julie Lawson, is doing a great job with the collaborative events and attending and learning about big picture learning. And almost all the students have not only shown an interest in internships, but I think she has 13 already in an internship right now out of 20. So she's really doing a remarkable job. So with that, I thank you for your time.
I do want to just mention one thing to the trustees, the photo. The photo, because part of PBIS, we have different activities, the end of the month, the monthly kind of awards. Kids earn Eaglet wings and then they can purchase more recess. This is the golden table. And so the golden table, there's like the fake, well, little candlelight, battery-powered little lights with these golden forks and spoons, and they get to eat their food. And yeah, so I took a quick snapshot, the golden table, so.
Thank you. So enrollment, we have been seeing about a 9-student increase each month. So at this point, we're up to 1,314, very close to where we were at this time last year. And we continue to see that growth. In part, we had the opening of the Cherry Creek Apartments, but we've seen numbers, particularly at Jefferson and Washington, going up. And we're fully enrolled right now in JEH, which is a program I think we'd like to continue to expand. So, any questions? All right. Thank you, principals, for doing that on the fly. I appreciate it. Just personalizes it.
Next, we have reports and discussion. L1, Measure H update.
Do you want me at the podium? I'm just going to give a really quick update.
You can do it from there.
Okay, I'll just step in and very quickly report on what we're working on. I believe at the last board meeting, the board approved the purchase of land for the Washington Street extension and the bus pullout. So that is something that we now are wrapping up so we can put it through DSA and hopefully start work on that in the spring. The other big project, as people have mentioned, is the district office renovation. It was intended to be a roofing project, then it became a siding project, then it became a sheetrock project, and it continues as we peel back the layers of we think it's the oldest portable in the district. So once you know how it is, once you get started, it just keeps going and going. So our goal, and we've been told that we will be back in the building, they'll be done by December 16th, is the current time frame. And then the other really important thing related to Measure H is we must complete all of our warranty walkthroughs. This is a it's $44 million, I believe, in taxpayer dollars, and we must make sure that the quality of the work and all of the bits and pieces are done correctly. Our warranty expires in December, so principals and our maintenance and operations team, as well as our construction manager and construction company, our contractors, will be doing walkthroughs just to make sure we haven't missed anything. It's, I think, a really important part of the process because schools are stretched very thin, and we often miss that last step, and we end up living with little details that never get fixed. So, so those are really the main things right now. We'll have a little pause as we go through the master plan update and are able to identify how much funding we still have left in our Measure H bond, and then make determinations based on the priorities that have been set, that were set years ago, which things are most urgent now. As Trustee Addison mentioned, there is funding for TK classroom construction, but we do need to prioritize that because there are some specific requirements if you're going to build TK classrooms with the size, bathrooms, et cetera. So that's where we are. Am I forgetting anything? Nope. Okay.
Thank you. L2, Special Education Program and Finance Update.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It is. Good evening, everybody. Stephanie Alexander. I'm the Director of Student Services. It's a little, yeah, that's right, kind of in the way, but I'll do my best to look around it. So I'm just going to speak tonight a little bit about what's happening in the special education world. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what's been coming. So let me see, here we are. So this year, we continue to work with the California Department of Education on the focused monitoring and technical assistance. We're looking at Cloverdale's an intensive review based on our 2018-19 data. So if you remember 2 years ago at this time, I was standing before you and I was presenting the SEP. Well, now I'm presenting the SEM. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's involved with that, but I wanted to point out a few of the focus areas that we're going to be looking at as part of the SEM. And so I'll give you a little bit more description about each of those, but we're going to be looking at the least restrictive environment, the IEPs held on time, and obtaining signatures. And that's not just about compliance, it's about family involvement, student involvement. We want to make sure that parents are aware when their student's IEP is coming, make sure that they're participating, and then they're usually very happy to sign the documents because they felt like they've been part of the process. And then also the other focus area is really implementing and updating goals for student improvement. So we're always looking at, as goals are developed with students, watching how they progress, what kind of things need to be changed. I am going to give a big shout out to the high school and Dr. Goyle. They're doing an amazing job with co-teaching this year. And I jumped in at 4 o'clock today. All of the teachers were in this Zoom meeting and with a co-teaching guru, and he was amazing. And they were all there learning more about how to really make sure that all of our students get exactly what they need. So thank you, Dr. Goyle. I told her earlier, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you've pulled all this together. She's got the resources for the teachers. They're going to have this 4-part series. It's really great. So I'm super excited about what we're going to be doing at the high school. So when we talk about least restrictive environment, what we're talking about is the idea that the students who get special education services should be in the same classroom as much as possible with other students. It's not about a place. It's about kind of this whole idea of a principle that guides us, that we want to have our students. When you have students have differing abilities, we all know that we have strengths and weaknesses. So when you pair students together, there's always strengths and weaknesses that they can help each other with. So that's really the goal of the least restrictive environment. And it's going to look different for each student because each student is unique. So the guiding principle is to try to find where the student can get their education in the least restrictive environment. Just to give you an example, the most restrictive environment is when we need to send students to a non-public school out of Cloverdale. So we're looking at how we can make sure we keep students in the least restrictive environment. So this is the data that the intensive review is based on. And we looked at those different elements in 2020, and I'm just going to kind of let you look at some of those different data points. We are working on those areas, but we don't really have any updates because we haven't really done any assessing the SBAC and that sort of thing until this last year. This year, when we looked at the 2020 data, this is all that we were able to gather. So the nice piece is that the least restricted environment, that element 5A, so the idea is that we have students that are 80% or more in their regular education classroom. So that increased. We went up to 39.6% students that are 80% or more in the regular ed classroom from the 30.60%. So we'll take that small gain. That means that we're working all together as a team with general education teachers and special education teachers trying to provide the best environment for students to learn. And the same with 2022. The only data we really have is that we have been able to increase our amount of students that are in the regular education classroom. We're up to 40.88%, close to the target, which is 53.2%. Also, I wanted to mention that we have been able to bring some of our students back into Cloverdale from non-public schools. So we did meet that target. We're at 1.10%. Right, and we did meet that target. So happy to see that. Yeah, exactly. So now this was the SEP, right? I had to review all of those areas, list the current improvement strategies. We did a root cause analysis, and then we developed new improvement strategies, and I had a binder this thick, right? And kept track of everything. We're implementing everything. But now this year we're looking at the SIM, which is a compliance implementation model. So currently I have finished step 1. We did a policy, procedures, and practice review. And then the CDE actually brought the consultant that I'm working with brought 2 colleagues, and they came for 2 days here to Cloverdale, and we were able to pull our special education staff. I want to do a shout out for Mary Beth Kelly. She represented our general education staff. Out of the goodness of her heart, she came in the afternoon to both of the sessions so she could learn more about what's happening in special ed. And so we did that training over 2 days, and it was there was a lot of information that we were able to glean from that. So it was a positive training overall. So you can see step 2, I need to do initiative inventory and theory of action steps. I won't bore you with what all that means. And then finally, I need to do another root cause analysis for step 3, which will be happening in December. So basically, the SIM is going to last from this year through 2025. So you'll see that where the progress reports are due at each one of those times. So I'll make sure I set that up for the next person. I wanted to point out what good news we have happening at Jefferson Elementary. Again, we're focusing on that least restrictive environment. Right now, we have 3 students with disabilities that are part of their general education classroom at Jefferson Elementary Preschool. They have a case manager that they are supported with, as well as the services from that case manager. We also have, we are contracting with Inspire Behavioral Services, so we get a behaviorist that comes out twice a month. And we also have trained support assistants that are in the classroom every day with students. So they are now participating with their general ed peers. We continue to give ongoing training for the preschool staff. So we're really working toward that inclusive model where we don't need to send our students to Windsor to go to preschool, but that we can service them right here in our own very sweet little preschool. If any of you have been in there recently, we did an update on the grounds last year. I mean, it's just a great spot. They have this great yard to play in, so we wanted to just continue to allow our students, our little preschoolers here, to be able to stay in Cloverdale. So what's next? So we continue to work on, as I mentioned earlier, getting 100% parent participation and signatures. That's a really important goal for me. I want families to feel like they have, that they're very much a part of their students' education, and they're very much included in the process. We want to continue to have those goals written to state standards so teachers are really aware of exactly what state standards students need to be looking at and how we write the goals so that they can attain those. We are working on having every single IEP completed on time. Full team participation, meaning that there needs to be a general education teacher, a special education teacher, any service providers, and administrator, always at IEP team meetings. So we're really working on that. And then finally, really just looking at multi-tiered systems of support. If you're familiar with that framework, it really is the idea that tier 1 is every student should get in every classroom. It's those things like welcoming students, making sure that they are able to access their curriculum, all of those things. So when we put those multi-tier systems of support in place, they really directly align with the least restrictive environment. Because the more supports you have in place in the general ed classroom, the more likely that students are going to be able to stay in their general ed classroom and receive their education there. Oh, another positive, transportation. We have been using Wheelcare Express as our source for taking students to our non-public schools out of Cloverdale, and we've been able to hire 2 new van drivers, which means we're going to be able to have our own students, support our own students in transportation, and we'll save ourselves a very large chunk of money from not having to pay for Wheelcare Express. So we're super excited that we've got new van drivers. They've been hired. Now it's just the process of getting them up and going. We hope to have them take over the routes by January. And then I think Patty's just going to spend a moment talking a little bit about the budget. That's her wheelhouse.
Good evening. So before you is a slide that outlines the revenue and expenses that are budgeted at this point in time in the school year. So for revenue, we're looking at $3,738,000. Of that, the restricted revenues coming in, state and federal funding, $1.3 million, and then the contribution from the general fund makes up the balance of that at $2.4 million. For expenditures, we have $3,956,000 budgeted, That includes not only the restricted resources, but also some one-time funds that are being used for the special education program and some carryover funds from prior year. And that's just a brief overview of the finances.
And I think I'm just about to the end here. Yes, any questions from you?
So we actually have public comment. So I'm going to have public comment come and speak, and then if the trustees have any questions, I'll call you back up.
Okay.
Okay. So public comment for item L2, special ed report of Renee Tierney.
Hi, I'm Renee Tierney. Thank you for that very good explanation of all the special ed. I'm trying to meet with her, but she's so busy right now that we're going to probably meet together in January. The main thing that I'm still concerned about is the preschool, and I managed full inclusion program at Jefferson School. We even won awards for that. We had like 12 children that were fully included. They were a lot of very severely disabled children. It was a very successful program, but I was a special ed teacher that oversaw it, and so I'm still confused about who is doing the IEPs for the preschool children, who's doing the curriculum, who's overseeing all of that information for those children that are in our regular program. So I'm not against them being fully included. I just want to make sure that they have an instructor that can, serve their needs and help them to make the most progress they can. I totally am in favor of not busing our kids out. So maybe in January I'll get answers to those questions, unless somebody can answer them now. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the trustees or student board rep have any questions for Stephanie?
I do want to say thank you for the information, because last time we had this conversation, I had asked about training the certificated staff, because I know last time we were training the classified staff to do para, and I was like, well, what about the certificated staff to be able to fully support the students in our classrooms to be full inclusion? And I'm excited that it seems like at least at CHS there was happening some co-teaching and collaboration between how do we do that. And also, actually, here's what I'll tell you, that Washington. So, needless to say that that is happening, and that we're learning how to work together and best support our students and be part of the classroom as soon as possible. Thanks for that update.
Thank you. Okay, L3, English language learners, priorities and programs.
Oh, it's with me. So, pardon?
We need to make sure Gabby gets that for public comment.
Okay. So I just want to quickly say that the board will hear from Dr. Odell as we're going through the FPM process. You'll be getting some regular updates just about the components. So it's a good opportunity for us to share information with you and break it into digestible parts. So take it away.
So good evening. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about English language learners, some of our priorities and programs moving forward. So as a reminder, we've talked a little bit about FPM already. It's federal program monitoring. They're coming in to review our programs, and one of our programs is our English learner program. And some of the things that we need to review and assess as a district is our EL master plan and our vision for ELs at Cloverdale. As we mentioned, we're in the development of a bridge document of the master plan that will help carry us through this year, and we're going to be doing some more intensive work so that we can have a really robust master plan moving forward. The second piece is we really need to look at our integrated and designated ELD for every English learner student. And some of those pieces are really dialing down to looking at the schedule. When does it happen? Where does it happen? How many minutes does it happen? What curriculum are we using? And which staff are we using to do those? Another piece is reviewing where our students are at in the most recent LPAC and what has their growth been over the last year. So from spring 21 LPAC levels to spring 22 LPAC levels. A review of graduation rates, review of how they're scoring on the SBAC, on our district benchmarks, on grades, and how does that impact our professional development plans for our staff. I'm not going to cover all of that tonight. You will be hearing about many of these in the future, but all these assessments and documents we produce to review these are going to help us set our priorities for our programs and our students moving forward. So in doing so, one of the things that we need to do is set a vision for English learners in our district. Obviously, we have a mission and we have a vision for our district, for all of our students, but a really robust EL master plan asks us to develop one specifically for our English learners, our multilingual learners in Cloverdale. So at our last DLAC meeting, we asked our parents and any staff and community members that were present to give us some feedback. So the first side is, what dreams did they have for their students? When they leave Cloverdale Unified School District, what do they dream for their students? So you'll get the full summary with everything that was said. Beth is going to send that out, I believe she said, but this kind of summarizes it. So really, dreams for our students. They wanted their students to have a good education and career, be a contributing member of society when they leave here, be happy with their choices in life, be excited to learn and gain confidence as a scholar, to be able to accomplish goals they set, be successful and do what they love to do, not what they think they have to do to earn money, and be able to achieve whatever they set their minds to. I think we can all identify with these goals as goals that we would like all of our Cloverdale students and our own students, our own children at home, to be able to accomplish. So the next question we asked is, our 3 words that we use in Cloverdale is engage, challenge, and nurture. And we asked our parents and our community members present, what does that mean for them? How do they want us to engage their students? How do we want their students to be challenged and nurtured? And what they really focused on was relationships, that we want them to be loved. We want our staff and our district to listen to our students, teach them, value them for who they are and what their interests are that they bring to the table. Challenge our students that failing is not what counts, but trying to do better is. I really liked that phrase from one of our parents. Spend more time with our students. Do critical thinking. Make them feel safe enough to participate and really let themselves out there and try something new. Connect learning to our Hispanic and our Latino cultures. Challenge our students to be more social and to ask for help. I thought that was interesting because oftentimes as teachers we're like, oh, I wish they weren't so social. But what I took from this and from how it was said was challenge them to be more social with adults, to be able to advocate for themselves and ask for help. Nurture them to be good citizens. So not just good academic scholars, but to be good citizens and members of our community, and to meet our students where they are. So with these comments, we are going to move forward with the next step to see if we can help craft a statement that really drives home this vision for our English learners. And we'll be working with you and bringing more forth. But I wanted to present what our parents had to say. And how do we bring that vision to reality? Well, really, they talked about dreams for functioning, happy, successful people with careers and jobs they love. So how can we create that context for our English learners? And so that when they're ready to leave Cloverdale Unified, they're ready for that dream. Well, the first thing we need to know is, where are they? So this is some data that we are producing for our FPM review. And what we're seeing is for last year, about 20% of our English learners made growth on the LPAC. The LPAC has 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you reach level 4, the thought and the hope would be that you would be able to be reclassified as English proficient. And what we see here is that the most gains are being made at the elementary school from K through 4th. If you see our current first graders from kindergarten, they made a growth of 88% of first graders that are ELs made growth, a whole level or more. And you can see that the bulk of that is at our elementary school. I will say that that's also the easiest area to make gains, because when you're gaining language, speaking and listening comes first. So you can make huge gains on the LPAC in just those areas when you're first starting out. So that's one, is not a huge surprise that we can see those large gains. But what was concerning is that some of our growth, our 10th graders, our 12th graders, had 0 growth. And many of our students actually fell levels on the LPAC, 1 to 3 levels. So from a 4 to a 1, for example. So what do we do about this? What are our next steps going forward? Why are we seeing those patterns? Just from my previous experience in other districts, I can tell you, one, as you get older, you have to spend more time motivating students to take the test. And the why, right? And I had many students that grew huge levels in the LPAC after we started working with goal setting and talking about reclassification and the seal of biliteracy and other things that made it worth their while to take the test and take it seriously. So I think there's some easy low-hanging fruit that we can do there to help in the upper grades. But we do see the gap. The other piece is we really need to look at our integrated and designated ELD. We spoke a little bit about this last time. Every EL student needs to have integrated and designated ELD. Our designated is protected time during the school day where we focus on our ELD standards. It's not done during core curriculum time. The law is silent on how many minutes we have to provide per day, but it has to be daily time. And it has to be differentiated by need and level. So we can't have our level 1s with our level 4s. We have to differentiate. There's different types of models that can be used, and the efficiency of that really depends on your school. So for example, if you have an elementary school that is a high number of ELs, you wouldn't do a program because you'd be pulling out 50% of your classroom to an ELD teacher. That doesn't make sense. You have a high number of ELs in the classroom. If you're in a different district where you have 5 ELs in the whole elementary school, a pull-out program would make sense. So we have to look at our circumstances and what our needs are. And the other big piece with this, and speaking to Windsor, who just went through their FPM in August and September, was ELD curriculum. It has to be on the state list, and you have to be using it. They will be coming into our classrooms and watching ELD happen when they come in April and visit. Lucky for us, Wonders and Wonders ELD is adopted by our district for K through 6, and it is on the approved list. Amplify and Amplify ELD is approved for 7-8. So we have what we need, and some of our next steps will be making sure that we have the training to utilize that. Integrated ELD, all classrooms with ELs, they have EL in class, all content area, they must support the ELD standards in progress. So whether it's biology class or math class, we need to be supporting our ELs. So we do have some pieces that we are working on that work with EL strategies so that our teachers have the capacity and the understanding of how to properly do integrated ELD. So where are these currently occurring? So in Jefferson, we have some groups in class. We are pulling out our newcomer students that are getting a little bit more intensive work with a small group. We have the approved curriculum wonders, but we do know that we have had a lot of turnover in teachers and need some training. Washington, we also are pulling out some of our newcomers, but we know that this hasn't been across grade levels and that we're not necessarily meeting all of our needs at Washington. Once again, we have those approved curriculum and we need some training, so we're working on those pieces for January and February. At our high school, we have ELD classes. This is a typical model in the high school because you rotate through your different classes. We have the curriculum, we have English 3D. They have had some training already this past month, and I believe we have a little bit of hours left for follow-up training. So we have those pieces in place. Updates that are coming is to check off for FPM and also for our master plan. We need to ensure that daily non-core time is used for ELD. All levels, every student that's in EL is receiving those times. And that we're using multiple measures to ensure students are placed correctly, especially at the higher levels where students taking state testing might not be putting in their most effort. We don't want to place them on effort, but on their capacity. And we are working with a plan to make sure that our curriculum is being used and our staff is trained to properly use it. Yep. Mm-hmm. That is a great, excuse me, sorry, I was sick last week. I still have the cough a little bit. That is a great question. I don't know if, Ronnie, if you have.
English 3D, we have 20 students, we have one teacher, so
I believe we have 2 or 3 that are ELs that are classified as ELs.
so there is no designated. There is integrated, but there is no designated. She might be.
That's a great question for me to add to my list, for sure. No, thank you. We often tend to forget about JEH, unfortunately, which is something we should not do. Thank you for bringing that up. I meant like. And there's some years we don't have any ELs. So it ebbs and flows there. Some of the other things that we are doing on the right-hand side, is Jacob still here? Jacob has been working on a monthly focus at Washington, and this month's focus is EL instruction. So he has some strategies, some inquiry that he's doing, and that's posted in the faculty room, the staff room, and they're focusing on trying to make sure that we're using EL strategies in the classroom. Some of the training, I've mentioned Wonders and Amplified, that we have the curriculum, but we need to ensure that our teachers are trained in it. We did some GLAD training last year. GLAD strategies are great EL strategies. Any strategies for ELs actually is great for every student. And we will be offering some more GLAD training in January, February. Writers Workshop has great strategies as well for ELs. And as you heard, we had some training last week. We have more coming in the spring. We are looking at AVID and at the high school. And AVID, from my experience, has really great strategies for English learners as well as for engagement. And really assists with the speaking and listening skills as well. And oftentimes once we get through the elementary, we kind of usually forget about those, focusing on reading and writing. But a large part of the LPAC exam is being able to actually listen to an academic presentation, and then you actually have to summarize it back with details. It is actually very difficult even for an adult. So those strategies we can't forget about as we move forward. We're continuing our EL roadmap training with my group of 5. We have our next training December 2nd. That one will be virtual. And then we have elevation training coming. You approved the purchase for elevation so that we can look at our data and manage our EL monitoring, and our RFEPs. And we have our admin training. There's 2 trainings that are happening in December, and then we'll be training our teachers to be able to utilize that data. ELs are also going to be focus topics at our PLC. Our January 3rd training on PLCs, we're going to use our EL data as the model data. So our teachers will be looking at their groups of ELs and how to design lessons for those. And ELs and EL strategies will be one part of our February 16th PD training as well. And we are currently updating our monitoring processes for our current English learners, and we'll be working with goal setting with our students. Do you have any questions? Those are kind of the steps we made forward to meet FPM as well as our master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you give it to Gabby, please? Thank you. L4, Washington School Update.
I'm gonna do this one for the podium. I'm starting. I'm gonna start, pardon me, so the one that I sent you. So, this is, you're gonna have a big pack, and we're gonna do 2 different parts. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Washington and spring, because we know there have been many concerns. The board fielded many concerns from community members and parents, and we want to I want to give an overview of what we did in the spring, and then Michael will talk about, or Mr. Waters will talk about where we are in the current Washington structure regarding climate, culture, and safety. And so I'm going to treat this as a bit of a timeline, and I think that's relevant because events exacerbated and not the pandemic, although I think all schools really felt that last year, and we're starting to see some recovery and shifts in student sort of behavior, familiarity with being part of a community again. But last year, as you know, many schools were really impacted. But this is our story is more complicated. Did it get turned off? Yep. So as we all know, at the very end of February, staff were placed on leave pending an investigation. Several days later, there was a student walkout that triggered quite a bit of unrest and student behavior. Shortly after that, we brought in behavioral health and mental health professionals to work with adults and students on campus, and we also, throughout the year, had a therapy dog who came to school every week. So that was something that we did right away, particularly on the heels of both the staff on leave and the walkout. What we did at that time, so typically in schools, there is a formula for safe school supervision. It's based on the age of students, it's based on the number. So a high school of 2,300 students might have 6 supervisors, an elementary school of 500 might have 6 supervisors. It really has to do with the age. I'm thinking about how at Jefferson, if you're there at any given time, at recess or lunch, you're opening juice boxes, or, you know, so supervision is also support. So one of the things that we did, and we have had and continue to have open positions for supervision, and knowing that those weren't likely to fill last year and that organizations are really struggling with staffing, we needed to come up with more immediate solutions. So one of the things we did, and this is a very typical and customary way to supplement supervision while supporting students with IEPs, is we reorganized our paraprofessionals to be part of supervision at recess and lunch. In addition, district office staff, myself, Stephanie Alexander, Patty Mills, anyone in the district office, we recruited Rick, came to Washington regularly to support lunch supervision, recess and lunch supervision, but primarily lunch. We also had district office staff working as substitutes. I substituted, Stephanie substituted. There were, whoever we, had available was often called upon based on availability to help. We ordered additional radios at that time. We didn't implement those right away. They seemed to be more than taking on the training, et cetera, was a challenge, but we did order them. During spring break, we had a student break-in, and shortly thereafter, and I mention that simply because following that, we had a meeting with our juvenile diversion officer, who's both an MFT, a clinical therapist, but is also a police officer, who met with staff, students, parents, and he was there as a police officer as well as a therapist, to work toward what we call other means of correction. Sometimes when students commit serious offenses, we have to give them punitive consequences, but we also want to use restorative approaches and approaches to addressing mental health needs, et cetera, because our goal is to make sure that students do not end up in the penal system. We don't want students to get arrested. So we had that meeting. Shortly thereafter, all the site administrators and leadership met with the police chief to talk about partnership in how we report and how we engage with police when we have events at our school. Washington School met and developed a more detailed discipline matrix separate from the PBIS matrix. In mid-April, we reached out, in an effort to add further supervision. We had a meeting with Washington staff where we reorganized the bell schedule. We also offered to pay staff if they were willing to sell a portion of their duty-free lunch to be adult presence on the blacktop. And many people did that. We actually developed a schedule so we knew who would be where, and people would usually take part of their lunch as lunch and then come and support supervision for the other part of their lunch. So really thinking outside of the box. We also reviewed all of our supervision routines in the morning recess, which is a little bit different. It's shorter, and 5th and 6th grade teachers agreed to walk their students to the cafeteria for morning snack. All teachers are expected to supervise during recess. That's not a duty-free time, but they take turns, not everybody at the same time. After that meeting regarding the schedule, because we were trying to eliminate what had been a long-standing overlap between the 5th and 6th and the 7th, 8th lunch, we immediately were able to implement the next Monday a new schedule, which also improved supervision. We beat the bushes looking for additional campus supervisors, and we have hired one who, her sole job, she comes and does a split schedule, but she supplements and does recess and lunch supervision. Our first attempt to divide the backfield, because we felt that that would help improve safety, was in April, and we used caution tape, and that didn't really last. Students were really accustomed to having access to the entire field, and that was a difficult, large space to restrict, but we tried caution tape. That was our first go. Around the 25th, the mayor, Todd Lanz, initiated a police investigation based on community concerns about safety. So he enlisted the police department to do an investigation. In April and May, we tried replacing the caution tape with safety pylons, not cones. They were slightly different design that we thought would be more stable. We tried those both to restrict the backfield, but also other areas that are typically harder to supervise. Around that time, we also had a parent meeting with parents from Washington at the Cloverdale Family Apartments. We had a community leader there, the police department, school administrators. We had 2 trustees present, and I was present to hear parent concerns and problem solve. We actually had 3 meetings with parents last year at the Cloverdale Family Apartments. And again, so all administrators met with the police chief. The bonus, we were able to hire a bonus administrator who came to work with us in the middle of May, so late in the school year. She supported some of our end-of-year district office activities, but she spent her time primarily stationed at Washington. On May 20th, there was a second student walkout. And around that time, we had a student fight that the police chief, we reached out to police and engaged in a conversation with the police chief and the police chief asked to be part of conflict mediation. So the families came together with the students and the parents. I have confirmed with the police chief that there was no further conflict following that mediation, but that's not an uncommon thing to do when you have some sort of a conflict or allegations of bullying, to enlist the police to address them, and especially if there's an underlying conflict that does not appear to be easy to resolve. On May 25th at the city council meeting, where we approved the MOU to hire a 10th officer, and that 10th officer is the school resource officer that we're still working, the city is still working to hire. They've been working on that, filling that position since spring. At the May 25th city council meeting, the police chief reported that there were no findings to substantiate the allegations of a crazy unsafe campus, but that we were a normal middle school and that there were issues that came up and that there were no abnormal findings. Around that time, we also just started inviting our first responders to come and engage when they could, to just be on campus, interact with students, be a positive presence, not for any punitive reason, but just to make a connection with students. Our third attempt to divide the field was a chalk line, as you would with like baseball. We drew a line on the field and delineated the point that students weren't expected to cross. Around that time, we also were made aware of some long-standing bullying that had been going on since before the pandemic. We did an investigation into that and got recommendations on how to address that. Those have been implemented, one of them being that we have anti-bullying or bullying education in every class across the school. So a few other things since the end of the school year, and of course we know that there were some really horrible things that happened, including a fight on the last day of school that resulted in injuries and expulsions. We developed a document, a district-wide behavioral support and student discipline guide that was board approved over the summer for implementation at the start of the year. We also wrote and the board approved a cell phone policy, a district cell phone policy, with the goal of limiting the distractions and interruptions, and also limiting the amount of cyberbullying that goes on through digital devices. We have slightly different standards depending on the age of students. Cell phone use at the high school is allowed for specific educational purposes with teacher permission and in between classes, but cell phones are not used during school at Jefferson and Washington. At Washington, we have little pouches students put their cell phone in, and they leave them zipped up all day. All of the site administrators and support staff implemented, the whole school actually, a program called the First 20 Days, where we establish our daily routines, what things look like on the playground, what things look like in the cafeteria, and dovetailed that with year 2 of our positive behavior and intervention and support at all of our sites. Mr. Waters further altered the bell schedule just to refine it to make sure that we could maintain safe supervision and safe transitions between our 2 programs. We do have additional staff supervision now built into the schedule, and across the district we adopted a practice. All staff are expected to wear lanyards with their ID badges, so you can walk onto campus and you know who staff are. And when an adult doesn't have that on, we all are aware and we ask, can we help you? Can you go by the office and sign in? And we have a visitor badge sign-in protocol at all of our sites. Some other things, I mentioned that we dedicated funding for the next 3 years for hiring a campus resource officer in partnership with the city and the police department. We reinstated a position that had been eliminated years ago, but that is a school safety supervisor. We have one at Washington and we have one at the high school. With regard to safety, not necessarily related, but all administrators and our MOT staff participated in active shooter training with the Sheriff's Department. And then following that, we met with the police chief again to talk about what that would look like in Cloverdale, because we're uniquely removed from other county services. And as I think people know, we have monthly emergency drills. This year, we also expanded, we added counseling staff and hours, particularly at Washington. We've dedicated right now, the music room is our counseling space. And we also, I know at Jefferson, they have a very strong program with teaching using expectation stations. I think Washington is adopting that practice this year as well, because Michelle Holden has some experience with that. What that means is really showing kids what PBIS looks like. So we talk about a multi-tiered system of support that's both an academic model as well as a behavioral model. So when we talk about Tier 1, every student, so these are our expectations for every student. Tier 1 is everybody. So practicing that throughout the year, and as I mentioned, anti-bullying education in all classes. We have a social emotional learning elective at the middle school. We're in the process of developing, and I'm not sure the implementation timeline right now, but the Boys and Girls Club will be running activities at lunch at Washington to expand on structured activities. And we're excited to partner with them on that. And then another project we've been working on, which Trustee Addison mentioned, is that we have a group of community leaders who came together over the summer to address the needs of our teens in this community. And where we landed on our focus right now is developing an ongoing teen center program. The Boys and Girls Club has had, I think, 5 teen center nights now. We were running them every week, and it slowed down a little. We're surveying students about what they want their teen center to look like. I mentioned that we visited shops, and that we're really looking at enlisting other resources so we can have things like parent education. You come and drop your kids off, but you can also maybe have a meeting with an MFT about parenting related to teen mental health. We have some really good ideas about activities on the weekend as well, including field trips that are tied to our expanded learning opportunities program. We've added at every school this summer, we installed new security cameras. They're amazing. We put new signage on campus that, while it may seem unwelcoming, at the direction of the police department, we changed our signage and added signage so that we can prevent unwanted trespassing. Our campuses are open to the public outside of school hours, but if people are abusing the campuses, we have the right to remove them as trespassers, and so the signage needed to communicate that. We've also added fencing on all of our campuses to create either safe areas for students to evacuate. We have, perimeter fencing at Jefferson. We've added fencing around the softball field at Washington, both to maintain the softball field, but also to limit the amount of field space that students have access to, just to make it a little bit safer. So it had dual purposes. We're working on a couple of other emergency responses, including what the police department has asked for, a football, which means that when you have an emergency, the police show up or first responders show up, you hand this thing off. It has keys to all of your gates. It has keys to your classrooms. It has other kinds of emergency response materials ready to go. So they call it the football. For us, it's an emergency response kit. And then we're working on launching a program called Stop It. Stop It was originally developed as a way to anonymously report bullying or vandalism. They've expanded their services, and they now offer a 24-hour mental health support. So students can access mental health from their cell phone any time of day. So our counselor at Washington is the facilitator and is getting trained in the implementation. We should be rolling that out soon. We think it'll be a good addition. So those are some things that really both address the timeline and things that we implemented at Washington last year. I'm going to turn it over, unless there are questions from trustees, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Waters to talk about what's happening this year. Okay, thank you. Yes? Right. Well, the main concern, I hear what you're saying, the main concern with the mental health is that students have access 24 hours a day. I'm sure there is a a website that they can access at school. But I think we're also thinking beyond the school day and making sure that students are able to report things and that they're able to access support. So we'll make sure they also know how to access it in a school-appropriate way during the school day. Yeah. Any other questions?
Seth, if you ever have anything, just speak up, please.
So, I told Beth that this is going to kind of be like the Wizard of Oz, that we're trying to move beyond last year, and that was we're not in Kansas anymore. So this part of the presentation is we've now landed in the land of Oz. And the staff, it's actually one staff member, but I think other staff are probably saying it behind my back. One of the staff members named me Pollyanna, but I asked her respectfully to call me Pollyandy because she said, you're just always so positive and so optimistic, and I kick you, and I do all these things, and you come back, and you're like little Pollyanna again. It's because that's the way I feel at Washington Middle School. So this presentation, hopefully you'll see, we've moved in a lot of ways beyond last year. Hopefully this will be the last time I have to talk about last year. I wasn't here last year. I came August 1st, and I've had nothing but incredible relationships, and they're still developing. Monday we had a staff meeting, and it was hard to believe it was just our 4th staff meeting. I'm still a newbie, so I'm still learning. But one thing that I am going to show you is I'm huge on data, and I've tried to get the data, and I've run all these reports out of Aries. So since I wasn't here last year, I ran these reports year to date, and I ran the reports from last year, and I ran the reports this year so far. And this is what I found, and I've done the best I can. The suspension data from last year, 54 students were suspended last year, and this year we've had 5 suspensions, 5 students. And then I said, okay, so that's kind of like apples and oranges. So how many students were suspended by mid-November last year? And it was 24. And this year it's 5, and at that rate we'll suspend 11 students this year. My goal is not to suspend another student this year. So the data looks like this. 24 students at this time last year, 5 students this year. We've had an 80% drop in suspensions. Next I asked, well, how many fights and assaults? All I hear is about fights last year. Well, according to the Aries data, there were 41 fights last year, or assaults. They actually are coded the same in Aries, so you have to really dig down to find out. And we've had no fights this year, but we've had 2 assaults. And I'm embarrassed to even say that that's happened, but it has, and we want to get better, and hopefully we won't have another one. So when you look at the data, the 12 fights happened at this point last year by mid-November. And I did look at the data because I was wondering how many fights, how many assaults, and the best of my ability, there were 8 fights at this time last year, because you can look at the notes and you try and look at how it was coded. So there were approximately 8 fights, 4 assaults. And again, we've had 2 assaults this year, no fights. I hate to say that. I'm superstitious. I'm knocking on the lectern because I don't want anything to happen. But that's an 83% drop. And then the final total discipline issues. Again, these are broken down because we really, in Aries, are 2 schools. We're a middle school at 7th and 8th, and we're called a prep school in 5 and 6. So last year there were 190 discipline issues, 120 in the 7 and 8, and 70 in 5 and 6. And at this time this year, we've had 9. So if you look at the data like that, by mid-November, there were 62 last year, and again, there's 9 this year. Again, an 83% drop in total discipline issues. I attribute that to, and you'll see going forward, to the staff buying into PBIS, which is positive behavior, You'll see student comments. I think that we're coming together as a staff. We're being more proactive, and we've implemented a lot of things that Superintendent McLean has said. So that's the data. Any questions on the data at this point? And I have to say, after I present the data, I have students all the time tell me, hey, just look the other way. And I go, I wouldn't be the principal unless I did rules and regulations. But for me, that's secondary. It's all about relationships. If you have relationships, you really don't have to have rules and regulations. And if you remember one thing tonight, and Michelle knows because it exactly happened a month ago because I was coming here when it happened. We were meeting in front of the library, and there's a student, two students walking by, and they had their skateboards in their backpacks. You know how they carry their. And foolishly, I said, can I borrow your skateboard? I haven't been on a skateboard in about 40 years. And of course, he laughed and he handed me the skateboard. And I rode it from the library down to my office and back, and I'm still standing, I didn't fall. And they laughed, and actually, Ms. Holden said, can you videotape Mr. Waters? So he videotaped me riding it, and I said, don't, go get my face, and he sent me the video, and it's cool, it's kind of fun. Okay, that happened about 5 o'clock. At 5:45, I'm coming here. He's coming from Citrus Fair, just going on his skateboard, coming up on where the entry is of the school. And I said, I'll call him Joey. I said, Joey, I am so sorry, you cannot ride your skateboard on campus. Oh, okay, Mr. Waters, okay. I said, I was a bad example an hour ago. I shouldn't have done it in front of you. I rode I'm sorry I did that, but you cannot ride on campus. He said, fine. He got off, he put it. In that moment, his buddy who was with him is riding across near the library on the skateboard. And he yells over, and I'll call him Johnny. Joey yells over, hey, Johnny, get off your skateboard. We're not supposed to ride skateboards. Mr. Waters says we don't ride skateboards on campus. When you have relationships, you don't have to keep your eye on the students because they self-police one another and they follow the rules and regulations. Because you establish a relationship and they respect and they do the right thing. So here, I'm meeting with the little guy, having the conversation. Obviously, I've blurred out his face a little bit. And we talk, and we do that teachable moment, and we establish a connection and a relationship. And at the end of our conversation, I asked him, are you going to do that again? He goes, oh, no, Mr. Waters, I'm not going to do that again. And I believe it. 9 out of 10 times, I don't see them again except for good things. They don't come back for repeated offenses. When they come back for repeated offenses, then we have to take it to another level. And Ms. Holden and Mr. Ramirez and Ms. Kelly and everybody else, you have those heart-to-heart conversations and you get good results. There's Ms. Holden with a student and her. She's actually, I think you're helping tutoring that young lady. So we have positive behavior interventions, we have restorative practices, we have positive school cultures, and it's all teachers, all staff. It's a unified team approach. The no cell phone policy, it's been magic. Is it perfect? No. Yesterday, I'm going in the boys' 7th and 8th bathroom, just checking that the urinals are flushed. I come around and there's kid on his cell phone. Oh, I'm just texting my dad. I said, look, I was just checking the toilets were flushed. You've got your cell phone out. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to finish texting dad, and then I'm taking it. You finished texting dad, I took the phone and I brought it to the office. Boom. It's working. Is it perfect? No, but we're dealing with humans, and we're dealing with little humans. But it's been a game changer. Staff supervision. I've had a great right. And so when I came to Washington, I knew how to use the radios. And we all have numbers. I'm 1, Ms. Holden, she's 3, Annie Millar was 2. That's why there's a Mr. Ramirez is 4, Emily Grant is 5, Tony Sack, our safety supervisor, 6. So we're always on the radio. We're constantly in communication all day long. And the main office is base. It's funny, when the Cloverdale Police Department come on campus, of course, they laugh at us because they have numbers. They go, I'm 8 or I'm 7. So, you know, they have a different protocol, but it works magic. The kids, you know, they don't like us always watching them, but that's our job. So, you know, it's really close to campus. And that image of the campus, that's our stations and zones, but we are always on rotation as well. We have, as Superintendent McLean said, Ms. Grant and Ms. Holden have done a fantastic job with the anti-bullying training presentations, and we've done it 5 through 8, correct? Yeah. So that's worked out well. We have monthly fire safety drills. We have fire, earthquake, shelter in place, lockdown, etc. I've gone through, and Michelle, Ms. Holden, we've done active shooting training. I've been through this training 3 times now. I've done it through San Francisco PD. I've done it through SCO twice. It's unfortunate that we have to do it, but it's our modern world. I'm also going to be trained in Narcan, another unthinkable, 5 years ago, but it's something that I'll be trained in, and I believe, Ms. Holden, you're going to be trained as well. We have monthly safety meetings, the entire team. So myself, Ms. Holden, and Ms. Grant, Ms. Sachs, the base team in the office, our health techs, so everybody's together. So we're constantly talking about how we can get better. And these, you can listen to me, but it's better if you listen to the voices in the community. In September, a mother wrote us and said, after my experience last year, I am happy to see how far we have come in such a short time. From a mother's perspective, I am beyond thankful to be able to send my child to a safe and healthy learning environment. And that's a direct quote for this mother's email. This is from a substitute teacher. The school has made an enormous turnaround. It's extremely noticeable that the students are happier, smiling more, and feeling safe and good about themselves. And the entire school environment is brighter, more positive, and I can't wait to return. That's a substitute that came on campus, never met her before, and I asked her how her day was, and that's what she shared. Direct quotation. This comes from one of our grade level PLCs. It's a little long, but I do think it's well worth reading. We love the new cell phone policy. It seems like our students have adapted to the expectations easily. When we are outside at break and lunch, it is such joy to see our students being kids. They are interacting with each other and running around playing instead of staring at their phones. School feels safer too. I feel that my shoulders are lower and not as tense. The students seem as though they are less stressed and happier too. I feel as though I am able to teach instead of looking for what is going to happen next that I need to be on guard for. And the students are in a better frame of mind to be learners. Thank you for all that you have done in facilitating and helping these changes in our school and for our students. So that came from a teacher. Actually, it came from a teaching group. It was sent from the groups. And there's more. Mr. Ramirez went around and interviewed our students. I won't read all of these. They're kind of funny. Well, it's typical student language. There's less fights. There's a lot less trash. And the 8th grader on the bottom, last year we had no rules and freedom. This year we're caged and can't do anything. Okay. School feels safer, but like less chisme, and chisme are rumors. So a veces soy chismoso, a little bit less of that. Kids are more respectful towards staff. And then I like, there's one here that says the staff is more respectful. Let's see, attitudes have changed in a good way. They used to be mean, but now they're nice. That was about teachers. So again, Mr. Ramirez walked around campus and recorded these. So, I like to hear the voices. I like that we're getting the voices and we're listening to people. And I take the good and the bad. The parent that came and gave the report earlier, I take that to heart, and we're going to get better. I would like to say they're perfect, but I expect to get better each day. And my goal is to be 1% better each day, and in 100 days, I'll be 100% better. So I take it very seriously, my responsibility, and I try and leave it all, as they say in sports, out on the field, but I do have the entire team. So this is my love letter to all of you in the audience. I think we have fantastic kids and loving and caring families. I think that there's just a tremendous amount of strength and positivity in this community that we can harness. And holding kids to high standards behaviorally and academically is what we should be doing. And our rules are safety, respect, responsibility, and kindness at the school. And we're going to keep celebrating the good. And when the kids fall, we're just going to help them get back up. And what we're doing is working, and our goal is to get better each day. And I thank all of you, and I thank for the opportunity to speak to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item M, discussion action. M1, consideration and possible approval of the Cloverdale High School and Johanna Eccles Hansen continuation plans for student achievement.
And while we're getting set up, I'll let the board know. So we will hear from, because of WASC, we're presenting the high school and JEH this month. The other schools will come to the board in December.
Well, we're getting set up. Thank you, President Garrison, Superintendent McLean, and the members of the board for hearing about Cloverdale High School and JEH and the things that we have been doing and hope to be doing. On this title page, I just wanted to highlight a few things. These are some of the programs, just some of the programs. There's so many programs at the school when you think about a school of less than 400 and a staff of 22. But we are one of the few schools in the area that has IDS. And Renee Duvander teaches IDS, and last year she had the class analyze youth truth data. And based on that data, they came up with some goals because they saw an issue with mental health. And so because of their work on the back of our IDs for students, there is the QR code that takes our students to the SOS hotline. The school. Upstairs. Sure. Information Data Systems? Intro to Data Systems. It's a course that was out of UCLA. And it is a course, it's a statistics course. And what's great is for our students who are going to college, it is counted as a higher level course. So it's a very good, I mean, especially for our liberal arts students. So great course. Our AP program, Advanced Placement, we have more students in AP classes this year. We have more students taking the AP test. Maker Education, I really am grateful for the students being patient with me as I was doing the lesson planning for a little bit. But so very grateful for Darren Duvander being in this room. I think you can already see the possibilities that he has already given our students about what they can design, what they can do, all the equipment's being used. And when you walk around campus, you hear, he's a chill dude. But you also hear how much the students are enjoying the class and making things, and how from one student, is one of their favorite classes now. So it's very exciting for that. And then we've already talked about drama and those kinds of things. So again, I want to thank you. I know this is a little out of order to hear one SIPSA before, and not all the schools at the same time, but our WASC document must be turned in before we leave for the winter holiday. And part of WASC is having our approved SIPSA in the WASC document. Our SIPSA this year definitely has been developed not only with meaningful input from our staff, but also from our parent community. ELAC was given an opportunity to provide input, as well as school site council. And tonight is your opportunity to provide input as well. I gotta learn how to use a clicker. While I'm learning. On. There we go. All right. All right, so to get us started, talking about our school, during the 2021 school year, where our students tested after a full year of distance learning, close to 57% of our students met or exceeded the standards on the ELA test. In the 2022 testing, with almost a full year back to in-person learning, 46.8% of our students scored exceeding or meets. And I think this is very indicative of the impact of distance learning on students. Our teachers did a tremendous job focusing on rigor and academics, but there was also a great undercurrent of trauma our students were dealing with, and that impacted retention and learning. So focusing on social emotional needs and rigor is a balancing act that we are becoming more adept at. Between the two testing years, there was an increase in the number of students above standard in reading and writing. However, for the areas of listening and research and inquiry, there was a decrease in the number of students with scores above standard. Working on these two concepts across curricular areas in particular can support learning for students while still focusing on reading and writing. Literacy really is something that we need to address in all curricular areas. A student cannot be proficient in math if they cannot read the problem. They have to decontextualize the problem. So we really want to see this idea of literacy across all curricular areas become a focus. In math, during the 2021 school year, where students tested after a full year of distance learning, close to 25% of the students received meets or exceeding scores on the SBAC. In the 2022 testing, with almost a full year back to in-person learning, 8% of the students received a meet or exceeding score. And I will say the same thing for mathematics, is that our teachers did a tremendous job of focusing on rigor and academics, but there, again, there's a great undercurrent of trauma. And that is what we saw in our youth truth data. That is what the IDS class uncovered, and it impacts learning. So again, focusing on social emotional needs and rigor is a balancing act, and we will become more adept at that. In math, there was a significant decrease in the number of students exceeding standards, but there was also a decrease in the number of students not meeting standards. One subcategory had positive gains and below standard and nearly met, as more students were in the nearly met band. So we did move students up. We moved them from the, think about far below, we moved them up to the middle band. So that was a positive. When we break the data down and we look at our achievement level between our Latinx students and our white students, we're looking at ELA. In our white students, 61% met or exceeded. Latinx students, 37% met or exceeded. More Latinx students, however, are in the below standards. Drilling down into the data by subgroup, our Latinx population scored 37% met or exceeding standards, already said that, which is a decrease of 3%. Our redesignated students were at 36% of meeting or exceeding, which represents a 3% decrease. Our SES population stayed relatively stable at 41%, meeting or exceeding standards, but the biggest gaps are seen in our LTEL population, long-term English learners, who are not meeting or exceeding, and our students with disabilities with only a 6% passing score. So this, I think, goes to what we're also seeing in the report we heard earlier. Written language is not a strength of our EL students and is the main area keeping students from reclassification. Students with an overall 3 or 4 still had a 2 in written language. And I think Dr. Odell spoke about this, that you can't have a 2 in any of your areas in the LPAC when you take the LPAC. So when I looked at all of the EL students and their LPAC scores, I was surprised that here we have students with a 3 or even a 4, but because they had a 2, they could not be redesignated, and it was in written language. When we look at math, drilling down in the data by student demographics, our Latinx population redesignated and SES students outperformed white students in the overall passing rate. Our Latinx students, 11.5% met the standard, white was 3%. Our male students had the lowest passing rate, and our female students exceeded the passing rate. There were no students with disabilities who passed the math test. So why do I share this data? Well, it's data that we need to become better at. I want to really compliment our staff. You should have seen them today looking at data, talking about our areas of strength, our areas for improvement, room for improvement in our WASC meeting. And one of the things that we all talked about was the idea of data analysis and how that is used to inform our school and what we, and our goals. So I share this data not only because it's important to WASC, it's important to our decision making, but it's also important because the SIPSA really does perform two functions. The SIPSA is our lever for continuous improvement. And you're going to see in there, we talk about family engagement, family and community engagement. That is part of our SIPSA. That is part of our WASC. That is part of who we are. We talked about it today. How do we bring more family and community engagement into our school? We talked about equity. And I'm going to, just say it now. At the No Eagle Goes Unnoticed luncheon that we had this week on Tuesday, race was a topic that was brought up by our students. So there is this idea of equity among our students as well. So SIPSA provides this idea for continuous improvement. It also supports our multi-tiered systems of support. And you can see in that you have academic systems. So we talk about Tier 1, instruction, Tier 2. We also have our behavior supports, or MTSS. So our goals should look very similar to you. They're the same as the LCAP goals. We just go into a little bit more depth. They're the same as last year. I just highlighted some key words here: increased opportunities to demonstrate critical thinking, research-based instructional and assessment techniques, something that we've talked about in WASC, increasing literacy in all discipline areas. I really think that is the key to improve student learning. And then increasing the A through G completion rate in CTE pathway completers. So you'll notice that I have selected strategies that we're continuing in our additions. If it's not highlighted, it's something that we're continuing and something that we accomplished. I do believe we strengthen the culture of the professional learning community. We've talked about professional learning communities. We spent time in what a professional learning community is. When you look at the agendas and minutes that the teams send, and I comment on them, they are focused on student learning. They are focused on looking at the data. They are focused on looking at the STAR reading and where our students are performing and what are the strategies that we can utilize to support them. So I really believe that our professional learning community has been strengthened and our teachers are working together. If it's blue, that means it was in our goals last year and we were not able to meet that goal, but it does not mean we want to just throw it away. We're going to keep it because we all know that having a cross-curricular writing prompt, for instance, let's say, and we see it in history and English already between Mr. Dobbins and Ms. Connor, but let's say science and history does something together and they look at writing and but they're approaching it from different perspectives and different content. So, and then they come together in their grade and they're talking about it. So this is something that we want to do. Last year, as you know, subs were a little bit of an issue. We hope this year we have much more success. So we hope to be able to do this second semester. If it's in green, these are new. These are things that we want to, that we've added. So we've not taken anything away from our goals from last year, but we are adding a few things. We are developing articulation agreements for dual enrollment with SRJC. So the focus of the K-12 Strong Workforce Grant was a dual enrollment program with SRJC, specifically for our CTE programs. And so our students can start here, have a bridge from here, have a completer program, and go on to SRJC seamlessly. Implement co-teaching. You've heard Stephanie Alexander talk about co-teaching. Co-teaching is very important to the success of all students. All students learn better from each other. And the co-teaching model, we have it in English, we have it in math, and we've been able to add science. So really happy and excited about that. We had a little bit of training at the beginning of the year, but we're having much more in-depth training. We started today, and I really liked what the trainer had to say. He usually starts, I call it co-teaching 101. He usually starts it at the beginning of the year where people haven't had a chance to interact. Well, now they've had a chance to interact, so he's able to really drill down a little bit more about how they're already using co-teaching and able to already start that coaching. He hopefully, fingers crossed, will be able to join us in the second semester in person. Increase high interest for students, high interest classes. This is something that we've already started talking about in our leadership team meetings, about surveying students, finding out what those high interest classes are, so we can offer those. We do have room in the schedule. And also, when we think about our CTE pathways, what are the high interest pathways for our students? Is it hospitality and tourism? I mean, we're in the most beautiful part of the state, right? And we have this amazing hospitality and tourism area. So is that something that students would be interested in? Early childhood development, which I have heard from students. Psychology seems to be a really fascinating subject for our students right now, and they're looking for things like that. So again, that goes to dual enrollment, high interest. And then we did add math intervention into the master schedule. So we have a geometry intervention and algebra intervention. And so students were chosen based on their potential. So they weren't there yet, but we know with some support they can be there. And so we've added those classes. Okay. Being short, I can't see the screen. So English language development, again, the same goal as we had last year, high quality English language development. We'll use the ELD standards and instructional strategies throughout the school day, and we monitor student progress towards redesignation. Catherine Ulrich, who's our counselor, is back. And last year, we both worked on monitoring student progress, and we'll continue to do that as we move into the semester and throughout the year. It's also the same as the LCAP goal. Our selected strategies, we really did meet quite a few, almost all of our ELD goals for last year. We have the ELD combo class, and we're going to continue with English 3D as curriculum. I appreciate Trustee Mendoza-Torres' comment and question about JEH. I'm going to research that a little bit about a continuation high school and how designated ELD works in that. We still have Rosetta Stone for all our ELD students. And Read 180 is a highly effective, highly researched, proven method for our EL students, and it's something I'd like to research and see if we can't bring that here. EL roundtables, we were not able to do last year. I'm really hoping that this is an opportunity, again, because we have subs, that teachers or staff who are really just have great strategies, who really meet the needs of our EL students, can share these strategies, kind of coach others as to how to meet the needs of students. We'll continue to provide GLAD training through the district. Again, Ms. Ulrich and I, we did meet with ELD students to review their progress and inform the students of requirements for redesignation. It was eye-opening to me last year that our students were not aware how to be redesignated. So again, now we really need to work on that writing. And we reviewed the RFEP. And then we want to schedule students in literacy-rich elective courses. Drama is a literacy-rich elective course. The sustainable practices, literacy-rich. So we want to schedule students. We want to be thoughtful about our scheduling. And then we want to offer, I'd like to look into PK. PK is a Parent Institute education program. It's an 8-week course, and it provides parents guidance on how to support their students at home, provide greater clarity on the American school system, provide some parenting guidance, and other topics. This has been a request of our parents, especially our ELAC, this year, and has been from many ELACs that I've worked with. This is something that they want to know: how do I support my student at home? I've used PK before at a former school and district, and it was very successful. so hoping, and I have a meeting with PK after Thanksgiving to see how we can get the program here. I think I just put this away. All right, social emotional support and intervention. Again, our teachers work so hard to meet the academic needs of our students, but I think we really also all know that our students had, I think, more trauma, came back to school with more trauma than I think we probably really understood what was going to be happening. And so we need to find a way to balance that academic rigor and social emotional support. We are doing our PBIS team in monthly meetings. We are going to continue to use Youth Truth. We just completed our first PASS survey. And whereas Youth Truth is summative survey of a student and where they are socially and emotionally, PASS is formative. And what is good about PASS is that as an administrator, I can look at the data and I can drill down to a student. And so we can really provide intervention, social emotional intervention for the students in real time. And the program does provide support for us in how to provide that intervention. We'd like to have more student-led discussion and student voice meetings. We did have this last year, as you know, because that's how block scheduling really, that was the tipping point, I think, was that the students got involved and were able to provide their voice. We'd like to continue that. We want to have a student voice meeting on block scheduling. And based on yesterday's No Eagle, or I should say Tuesday's No Eagle Goes Unnoticed meeting, I think we need to do probably student voice around race. But that's another conversation. But it has been wonderful to sit down with students and hear from them about their views on what's happening at the school. It's a small group of students. No Eagle Goes Unnoticed. It's a random group of students. We ask students what's going well and what can we do better. And we let them know, if we don't know what we don't know, we can't help. We can't do better. We've heard some great things. We've heard students actually say the cell phone policy has been good. They like that they have to put their phones away. They said that some students are not putting their phones away or go and pick them. And one student said the other day, you need to make the rules more stricter because it's actually been good not to have that distraction. They also talked about culture. They talked about behavior. So it's been really nice to hear what they have to say. We've already started doing some things based on the feedback. We have supporting student mental health through Bring the Change to Mind, Team Success. We have a diversity and inclusion club getting started. We did QPR training, which is basically it's training for our staff on how to recognize and respond to any type of suicidal ideation. What we didn't do, we did have the model to restructure our SSTs to an MTSS format with the Google survey. We weren't able to accomplish that last year. The structure is there, it's just getting it started. And then we have an attendance plan. And part of that attendance plan is really about positive attendance and recognizing positive behaviors. Sending out notes, hey, we saw you at school, it was great to see you, for a student who might have been out for a while, or a student who is out, hey, we miss you. So just kind of let them know we recognize them, because again, no eagle goes unnoticed. Are there any questions about what school? Cloverdale High School, SIPSA. All right, so I'm gonna, okay, sorry. Okay. And I also want to, and I should have said this earlier, California dashboard data still has not been released. And so, the CASP data I was able to pull. The dashboard data should be released, I hope soon, because we need it for WASC. But they said the end of November, early December. So the data so the best data I had was the CASP data and ELAC data. So thank you for noticing that comment, because we are doing things, and I think you already heard it. I think Superintendent McLean talked about it. Other means of correction. And for the school ourselves, our goal is not to have students sent out of the classroom, so teachers are calling the office and we go to the room and either talk with the student or bring them back to the office, but we take them back. So that's what we are trying to do. All right, JEH. JEH is a part of the Big Picture Learning Network, and as such, the SIPSA is going to look a little bit different. First of all, because it's a small number of students, it's only 20, there would not be the kind of data pull that we would get from a larger school, because by pulling the data, you're going to be able to identify students. So the data is not there, for instance, like in CASP. Also, I wanted to say that I do meet with Ms. Lawson, the teacher, monthly, and what she has done in a year is absolutely remarkable. She's really done a fantastic job. So, big picture. I'll just read. It's the vision that all students live lives of their own design, supported by caring mentors and equitable opportunities to achieve their greatest potential. We move forward, prepare to activate the power of schools, systems, and education through student-directed real-world learning. I feel like the big picture mission and vision is something we strive for in all of education. So to develop the student agency, we provide relevant learning experiences through a culture of exploration, empowerment, and community. And then the 3 LCAP goals that we have are the same for, the 3 LCAP goals of college and career readiness, language development, and social emotional support, they're inherent to the big picture schools. So they're written a little bit differently, as you saw, but learning is based on the interests and goals of each student. Curriculum is relevant to the people and places in the world. Students' abilities must be measured by authentic quality of their work. And you can read the rest of that. But the personalization, I think, is the most important piece to big picture. So some of the selected strategies we're doing to meet these goals is for the curriculum, we do use Acellus, English 3D, and it is a project-based curriculum. Acellus is the online program. That's how students are, their math, their English 3D for our EL students. We do have internships, including transportation. We are partnering with SRJC to provide Counseling 270 and a Jumpstart to College program. So we are also, JEH is also partnering with SRJC and having Counseling 270. The roundtable discussion for best practices for EL and LTEL students, JEH will be included in that. Community presentations and mentoring is definitely a selected strategy. We're getting more community members presenting and mentoring our students. Weekly counseling sessions happen or as needed. So we have team success going down over, I shouldn't say down, over to JEH, as well as Ms. Ulrich, now that she's back. This year, we're using something that we're really excited about, and that's the Emblaze app. Emblaze actually is this app. To say track students is really not right, but when a student goes to an internship, the student checks in, and we can pinpoint where they are. Mm-hmm. So it's like an attendance monitoring system, and so it helps us knowing that our students are at their internship, or if they're leaving their internship, helps with the attendance. And then leaving to learn is something new that we added this year. And this is the idea that students explore their passions, curiosities, and communities. So they're actually leaving the classroom, they're going out into the community, and they're learning more about their community. And I mean, even walking around the community, Julie said, the students were like, oh, I didn't know about this, I didn't know about that, so they're learning about the community. I do want to talk a little bit about the program because there is a need for the program. We had 20 students last year, we have 20 this year. 20% of the students last year had internship. We're already at 55% of our students this year, and more probably happened this week. We have 70% of the students that have started the process to have an internship or to establish an internship, and the rest of them want an internship and are working towards finding one. There is a need for this program. The students want the program, and Ms. Lawson is hoping that there might be, at some point, a discussion about, I think we all would like to have a discussion about, could we expand the program? Did I kill the battery? Okay, I thought there's... Okay, I mean, that's it. Are there any questions on the JEH? No, that was it. I'm sorry. I thought I added a slide that said questions, but I forgot. Last year, it was separate last year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Separate. Mm-hmm. I think just because, the schools are separate, I don't know if there was a reason why it was separated last year. Maybe the questions are different. Maybe, what they're looking at. I'm not really sure why, because they also talk about, it's not just the FAFSA night, but they do also talk about college exploration. Because I think I didn't highlight this, and I should have said it. Big picture learning, their goal is that students do go to college. Students do apply for college. They do fill out the FAFSA, and that is the goal. I just wanted to double check on the strategy activity 7. Mm-hmm. It had here an amount of $2,000, and it says that it will pay for mileage and travel costs associated with collaboratives, such as hotel expenses, up to 3 times a year. So is it $2,000 per each time, or is it $2,000 total for those 3 times? Total. Yeah, most of the collaboratives are in the area, but she had to go to Sacramento, and that mileage alone was almost $250. But sometimes, if it's a 2-day collaborative, she might need to spend the night. But most of them are in the area. We went to Steve Stewart, and she went to one. It was down in Roanoke Park. So, yeah. 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 So, right. Every student is different. So, we look at attendance. So if a student, thinking of a student right now, was having issues with attendance last year, she was really struggling. And I said to her, if you come to school, I think it was 2 months, we will get you in JEH. Okay, and that was she came to school and she's thriving at JEH. Other students, it's based on credits, and some students it's based on credits. Some students it's based on their need and their expressed desire. So we start talking to students their sophomore year, because we can already see in the sophomore year the idea of one size fits all is not fitting them all.
And last one, I know it was mentioned restorative practices. Can you just give us a brief overview of what that means? I have an understanding of what it means.
Restorative practices, in a nutshell, is about repairing relationships. When something happens, harm is done, at least to one individual, if not more. And so restorative practices is about not undoing the harm, but trying to repair that relationship so that people can move on. Most of the time, when we do a restorative with some students, it's magical in the sense that, you know, the students walk away like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, I didn't understand, you know, how the impact of words or these kinds of things. But I will also be honest that we've had a couple students who have chosen not to do restorative practices, and which is a shame. But so far, the ones that we have been able to do this year, I think have repaired relationships, and we haven't seen issues between those students again. You're welcome.
Trustee Gabby Mendoza Torres, motion. Trustee Brandon Axel seconded. Approval of the CHS and JEH continuation school plans for the student achievement preferential. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And Trustee Lopez White is absent. M2, consideration and possible approval of addendum to the agreement for consulting services with Geocon Consultants Incorporated for mold remediation.
This is in addition to services to address the district office. As mentioned, when doing repairs, we discovered that there was mold in the sheetrock and the insulation. So we've taken out all that. It's been replaced and remediated. And so there was an increase in cost. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve into as read.
Trustee Axel motion, Trustee Addison seconded. Approval of addendum to the agreement for consulting services with Geocon Consultants Incorporated for mold remediation preferential. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And Trustee Lopez White is absent. M3, consideration and possible approval of the contract agreement with CBS Plumbing and Heating Incorporated for emergency plumbing repair.
So we discovered through the city that we had a significant water leak. It actually took us a while to identify it as underneath the building on campus. And we've had to turn the water off in order to stop the massive leak. And the process to repair this is going to require that we basically cut off the existing
Trustee Addison motion, trustee Axel seconded, approval of the contract agreement with CBS Plumbing and Heating Incorporated for emergency plumbing repair, preferential. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? And trustee Lopez White is absent. M4, I just want to note the time. It's 9:20, and we still have several items to go through. So before we get into it, I would request a motion to extend the meeting, and because by 9:30 we have to extend, and we can only extend it one time. So we need to make sure we pick a good amount of time. Not that we have to use it all, but we do. I would like that. That's my request.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting
We don't have to use it.
until 11 PM, contingent on the heat being turned on.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm in the process.
I will second the motion to extend the meeting until 11 PM. Is that 90 minutes?
So the motion was made by trustee Addison, seconded by trustee Mendoza Torres to extend the board meeting to 11 PM pending the heat turn on, so an additional 90 minutes preferential. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And trustee Lopez White is absent. And I will just want to say, Seth, if you need to leave at any time, feel free to bow out. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Seth. Seth left at what time?
9:22. Okay, M4, consideration and possible approval of human resources manager position and job description.
So after needing to add just as with
I think you were about to say, obviously, if the community read the agenda, yes,
Yep.
fiscal impact, yes,
There is a
it's,
fiscal impact.
as far as
That
the
was-
salary, it says none.
We start with a cover sheet that we go in and edit, and that was an oversight. It should have given a range or something like that. Is your mic on? Oh, maybe not.
We do have public comment on this, if we can call that before the trustees ask any more questions. The first public comment I have on item M4 HR manager is Renee Duvander. Okay, next I have Angela Cordova.
Before we start, you mentioned earlier that my name was on a comment card. It's not, so I hope you didn't alter that card. When trustee Addison asked you a question and you said tonight my name was on, or a name was on the card, it was not. So don't alter that, just reminding you.
She was speaking about it, the
Yeah.
minutes we were approving. from
Previous
last
is fine, but tonight that was not the case. And then also to answer your question, nobody signed the recall in error. Your witch hunt cost us 3 times more the amount.
Talk about the topic.
I am, but I had to make sure that they understood what they said. But thank you, and it's a shame you're not running again.
Please continue.
So why are we seeking to hire an HR manager? Because Betha's stressed out, as she just said. Isn't that part of McLean's job duties? Public records request only shows 1 page of her job description. I don't know where the rest of that is because I asked for it. What exactly is Betha's job duties? Obviously, it's not enough. Clearly, it's not enough. We never needed to have an HR manager prior to McLean's arrival. This should send a clear message to the entire board that our staff clearly has issues if you have to hire an HR manager. And if Betha's too stressed out to do this job, there's plenty of other jobs out there. I think Walmart's hiring. What is the expected salary of this position? I think you said it was upwards of $90,000, $98,000. Why don't you decrease McLean's salary to fit the salary of the new position of somebody that has to do her job or part of her job? Or just fire her and hire somebody more competent so we don't have to hire an HR manager. Past superintendents have been able to perform these duties. She's got 2 more years, I believe, on her contract. I don't know why you're trying to push this issue this evening. I don't know why you can't wait until her contract is up and then review it. Also, earlier, all the presentators gave a very good presentation on each topic that they had tonight, and it was very impressive. But I think that you should seriously take into consideration reviewing McLean's contract and raise after all of these protocols are put in place, programs, safety measures, everything is put into place. And I'm sorry, I'm
I
talking.
don't think that's the topic.
It is, it's M4, right? So it's a HR manager, it's her job that she just admitted she's too stressed out to do. So if you want to argue, we can spend the last minute arguing. I'm used to that with you. So once the programs are put into place, then you should review if she really does need somebody and see if those programs are effective. These were all promised before by previous administrations and they were never fulfilled. So reconsider that before you go and hire somebody to do part of her job.
Next public comment I have is Liz Blasi.
I'm Liz Blasi. I think my comments are more questions. Some of the same questions that Angela asked, based on previous miscellany necessary for a school district our size. I did see mention of new and expanded programs and funding sources. And I'm just curious as to what those are, and I can forward you my questions later in an email. I also just wanted to reiterate, because it was the same, some of the same things that I had questions about is, have we ever had a human resources officer? Sorry. Have we ever had a human resource manager before? And with a school district our size, is this a legitimate use of our funds? Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions for the superintendent or Patty Mills, CBO?
I think it was explained.
I would say in the past, I know the district office has gone through some organization where they had positions and they let go of positions and they back to position. How many, I guess, how many people are at the district office right now? And then, well, then I can figure out what's what.
So the CBO payroll, it also does accounts receivable. The HR technician who also does accounts payable, the executive assistant, and myself. Did I say the CBO?
Yep.
I think I did. So 6 positions. We have, the CNI director and the special ed director. And then we also have the staff that supports our EL program and our outreach, community outreach, bilingual community outreach. But for this particular position, the related positions are the CBO, payroll and accounts receivable, the HR technician, accounts payable, and myself and the executive assistant.
Is this position tied, it's not tied to the classified unit or to the
No,
certificated
it's a
unit?
management position, so it's outside the unit. Sorry, feedback. The question was if this is, if this person is a member of the classified bargaining unit and they are not, they're in the management group. Because there are criteria, including independent decision-making, that place someone in management, as well as evaluating other employees, or the capacity to evaluate.
And this is something that an internal candidate could apply for?
Yes.
If they wanted to?
It seems like there's a lot of sharing amongst, especially you and Patty. And it seems we also use a lot of outside help. For me,
Correct.
it's not so much the size of the district. It's the environment now with legal matters, employee matters, the different units. We're always make a decision, and you want to make a decision, you're always saying, oh, I can't do that, I have to go check. So to have someone that can hopefully do that without all these checks and balances, such as savings on time. No matter, yes, you can still argue the district isn't the size, but it's a big time sink for a lot of employees.
So we have 188 employees, and we have a part-time HR technician. I am the, technically like the HR, the deputy superintendent of HR, and handle the higher level HR matters. But the more an employee is pulled to, for instance, handle budget matters, because the budget office is exploding, then they cannot necessarily do all of their job description regarding the HR part, so I will absorb that. Or similarly, if they can't get to the budget office pieces, then Patty will absorb the budget office pieces. And that happens for all employees. It's not happening to me exclusively. It's happening to all the employees who are affected by human resources. So I would say it also of Kathleen. A good example of one of the things that consumes an enormous amount of time right now is posting positions, reposting positions, recruiting, reaching out to all the agencies we can, including universities, making sure that we sign up for things like online job fairs. So the recruitment component has become much more time consuming. Would you like to say anything?
One piece that comes to mind very blatantly every single day is our accounts payable HR tech. She is handling all of the accounts payable for the district. So we've increased our one-time dollars, $4 million. And then our bond fund on top of our general fund, which is $18 million. Bond fund, $46 million. It has been over several years, but it's totally inflated our accounts payable system. So this person is kind of split between HR and accounts payable, and it is definitely a job that I don't believe can be done in 8 hours. We saw last year when this person was out on extended leave, and I was overseeing it along with, went through about 3 subs, and it is just an enormous task that this person does every day. And it's just not sustainable. We will see, you know, as the bond dollars drop and we expend them, we will see that kind of backing off. But with COVID also, leaves have changed, just the requirements in general. We're up approximately 40 employees over what we had in the past. So that takes a lot of onboarding, hiring, terminations factor in. It all has grown exponentially. And just to give you some context for the past, prior to, and this is going back several years, back into about 2011, I believe it was, we did have an additional 8-hour person in the district office at that time. And when budget cuts were made, and they were pretty severe at that point, we were heading into a qualified status as a district, that position was eliminated. And the duties of that position still remain, but they were parceled out, if you will, to the other remaining executive assistant, the payroll person, and the accounts payable HR tech. So their jobs all kind of grew at that point, and that position was never reinstated, even though we've, you know, seen our budget definitely improve.
Any other questions from trustees?
No.
All right, I'll move to approve M4.
I'll second.
Trustee Addison motion, trustee Axel seconded. Approval, Ms. White is absent. M5, consideration, discussion, and possible revisions to board bylaw 9324 minutes and recordings.
So the board requested that we bring this forward to make sure that it reflects that we are recording our meetings now. However clumsy we may still be, we are doing it. So the current, and Kathleen, you can speak to this, but this is based on the CSBA model policy.
And so I just want to make sure that I understand where they're being recorded to, because I was the one that asked for us to look at our bylaws, just to make sure that everything aligns. And I know that here it states on page 221, any district recording may be erased or destroyed 30 days after the meeting. Recordings made at the direction of the board during a meeting are public records and upon request shall be available for inspection by members of the public or district equipment without charge. Right now, I just want to make sure that we are placing, where is this being stored?
They're on YouTube. They're stored on YouTube.
And then, I know it says that they would be destroyed within 30 days. Is that any of the direction, or is that any thoughts
That's
that we
something-
have had, or is that?
It says May,
May.
but I think we need to
Keep.
be explicit. Either we keep it, or we set a time period we keep it for, or we destroy it every 30 days. But I think we should be explicit about what we're doing.
Originally, we were going to, there was some desire, especially as we transition into a new term, that people be able to see the board meetings for more than 30 days, and that we would discuss as a board in January the length of time we wish to store them. So we have a place, you know, they're being held right now. We have one recording so far. The board could of course alter this now, or the board can alter it as part of our review of our bylaws with the new board. It's really at the board's discretion.
Yeah, I think we need to have the discussion and be explicit, and it probably should. We're so close to having a board member. I think we should wait until we have the new board together.
So would we, yeah, we can hold that discussion, and I think it would be wise for all of us to hold that discussion, or revisit the topic once again in January. So do we pull the item, or do we pass it and then we're gonna see this item again?
We could vote on it now, and then it will come back in January. That way we have it.
That would be my recommendation, so that our policy matches the fact that we're recording.
Okay, so this is matching this, okay, and then,
You can always bring it back.
And the language currently says may,
Yeah.
so we're not doing anything to the recordings at this moment. So they're sitting on YouTube.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, and then further up, and this is the same topic really, it says, official board minutes and recordings shall be stored in a secure location. So tied into what we just talked about, I think that needs to be, how long we're storing them for needs to be defined. Whatever period, I'm not particularly interested in that, I just think we should be explicit. But that's tied into what we just talked about. The other one is the one that came up that I mentioned when reading the minutes. It says the minutes shall reflect the names of those individuals who comment during the meeting's public comment period. So I don't know that that is legal as written.
I think we can vote on
If
it.
somebody doesn't put their name on it, I don't think we can assign them their name whether they know it or not. I think we have to put what they put on the card. But I don't know, I think we need a legal opinion on that.
I think you're right. I think that people can identify, it doesn't say by their legal name, but we are identifying them by whatever, it could be X, or reflected in the minutes. It doesn't have to be their name.
Yeah, I'm
Their
not doing
legal
it to
name.
be obtuse, I just think
No.
if somebody chooses to put Joe Schmo on the card, that's what we have to identify them
Right.
as. Yeah, just something, I think that's a legal gray area.
Right.
So are we,
Which paragraph is that on there?
7?
7.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. Name provided on the comment card.
And the law only requires 30 days, so as long as we're retaining them for 30 days, we're okay.
Yeah, and I just think we need to be explicit. It can be 365 days or whatever, but I think we need to. I tend not to like the word may.
Any other changes at this time? Additions? Okay.
So I would move to approve M5 with the change in language as noted, changing the name of the individual to the name put on the comment card for the individual. And that the motion needs to come back to us by February after we've got our new board members' input.
I'll second.
Trustee Addison, motion. Trustee Mendoza Torres, consideration, so approval of revisions to the board bylaw 9324 minutes and recordings to include the addition of names provided on the comment card, and to bring it back by February with new board for discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And Trustee Lopez White is absent. M6, consideration and a possible approval of revised 6000s board policies, administrative regulations, and exhibits.
So I want to put this in context because the board received a big chunk of policy. Because we're now on Gamut, we are able to look at our most recent update alongside the most current CSBA update. The CSBA updates are generally, they're generated as laws change. So by following the CSBA updates, we stay current with changes in law or additions to law. Sometimes policies are no longer relevant and they're eliminated. This particular, so we are going to go through a process of updating our policies by category. And the 6000s are coming up first in large part because of federal program monitoring, because we have a lot of policies related to requirements that are part of the FPM. So normally I don't think I wouldn't just bring you this many policies at once. In general, and also policies are always, they can go through multiple readings, they can go through, sometimes it's easy, we just made a modification and approved a board policy. Sometimes the board needs to give feedback and then bring it back for a second reading and it can come back for a third reading. So there's no expectation that the board will approve all of these tonight. In my own process of reading, and I'll tell the board how I would typically want to do it, is I would want to do the first reading, prepare my own notes, like my markups, to share with the board my thoughts, and that we would identify 2 trustees who do the close reading of the documents in advance of, and then are able to present. Everyone can read them, but we would have 2 trustees who take it on to go into depth, and it doesn't have to be the same people every single time. And then we review them, and then the board decides whether to approve them as is, or it's just a door.
No, I think you need to turn your.
Oh, my mic. So in any case, I expect that these will probably come back for a second reading, but this is the first group we need to do because of our timelines. So I'm happy to answer questions. We can go through them. I was able to identify a few that need edits, and we could take the board's edits and then edit them and bring them back in December. There are also some new policies that are more specific based on new law and requirements for instance, homeless youth. And these are all really good policies. They outline things like IEP requirements, and when we, for instance, a student is excused from physical education, what the requirements are. I mean, they're all things that help us to run programs. So I will say that there is 61 board policy 6158 does not apply because we don't have a long-term independent study program, so that should be omitted. So if you can just strike that. We do have a short-term independent study program, but that model bylaw doesn't apply to.
Can you repeat
us.
which one it was?
That is 6138.
38?
I'm not wearing my glasses. 6158, thank you.
And that's one that you say should
It says, yes, it should be struck because it doesn't, board policy 6158, because it doesn't apply.
And striking the AR too,
Yes.
then?
I would say that we also need to look at, the school day regulation 6.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
we
that
can't have that.
that either just, we strike that or we add, except when the school is identified as being in a rural community. 235.
We can add, yes.
Yes.
We can add that clarification just to make sure that we are clear and that, and I don't know if we can add like Cloverdale identifies as a rural school, just to
Yes.
make sure we're really clear that
Yeah.
we are starting.
Yeah, I would rather strike that sentence and.
Is there
yeah,
any
but
disadvantage?
say what you're saying, but I don't think we should put something in policy and then immediately write a line with an exception. That's, I think that's a legal morass.
So we can just strike it.
I think
Well,
we
it says
should strike
grades
it.
9 through 12. I think we want to say the school day for the high school shall begin,
If we don't have to set a time.
But yeah,
I don't
you
think
put the
we should set a
resolution.
time, because if we say 8, what if somebody runs an earlier class?
in our case, because we are an exception currently, we have a resolution for the early start. So I think we can say the school day for high school shall be set by resolution, period.
Yeah.
And then you go to the resolution, we can
Then we
even
can change
The
identify. the-
resolution can be part of the AR.
By resolution, grades 9 through 12 can start earlier than 8:30 a.m.
I say keep it simpler than, even simpler than that.
Okay.
Don't even name the time.
On the previous page 2, we're committing to
The school day for high
holding
school
exercises
shall be
for
set by resolution.
a bunch of things too, like. we
Which
need to
page
have
are you on,
The
Preston?
previous page,
Okay.
234.
or
Yes.
actually not, sorry, not the previous page, mine got out of order. 238.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Messes me up every
Yes.
time. So we have to do exercises for Susan B. Anthony now and Burke,
But we don't
but we
have
don't have a teacher
certificated.
day.
I know.
Well,
The
I wrote
districts
that.
shall
I need to
hold
know a lot more
exercises
about
in
this.
accordance with law to commemorate the following special days. And it's defined by Ed Code. So,
In our old bylaws, it had, there was other days that were also included, that they're not limited to this list.
mhm.
And I wanted to look at the other, our bylaw, to
Yeah.
make sure that we,
I want to look at it more closely too.
to include that, or, you know.
Yes.
And
So-
then, I don't think the holiday of June 19th is also on here.
Yeah.
There's
That
no
is
school
somewhere
though
else,
during that
actually.
time. Well, or any of
Summer
our
school.
summer school.
Summer school,
So yeah, we need to add that.
It is mentioned somewhere in here.
Yeah,
it was mentioned, I think, well,
I don't, I mean, it was 300 pages, I don't remember where.
so
We just say shall observe.
It
we
is
need to find
somewhere
out
in
what the
here,
Ed code says.
Juneteenth is
you
mentioned.
have to look at the Ed Code. We don't want to make, yep.
Yeah.
I know we spoke about it
Can I,
at our board meeting.
Well, but this does have Black America Day on March 5th. But
So-
there is somewhere Juneteenth is mentioned.
so here's what I'd like to suggest, is that we pull, if the board identify the policies on this list that need to be pulled and brought back for a second reading, and we mark those, and if there are any that can be approved tonight, we can approve those, and then we can go through and do a more close reading of the policies identified. Are there any that you feel
I do the
are
whole thing
ready?
together.
I don't-
Pardon?
What?
Do you want to do the whole thing together, or you want to do?
Yeah, I want to pull them all.
Yeah.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to give
My process is.
Is
like
the first
Gabby
reading.
just I want to review current policy,
Okay.
so I know what we're changing. I want to review the resources that go with each of these suggestions.
So here's so let me make sure that, because I want to give direction to Kathleen, because I want you to get these well in advance of the next meeting. I want you to get them immediately. So you need all of the current policies in the 6,000s,
I
as
need
written.
The full gamut access so that I can review all of these policies with all of the links and resources associated with them, as well as our current policies that we're replacing.
Okay.
So the whole program is new, the way that it works, and we can actually put them all in a work in progress, and you guys can go in and review them as a work in progress. also in Gamut.
As long as we have full
Yeah,
access
full
to
access
all
to see
policies in
everything, yeah.
Gamut, because there's many times that there's
Absolutely.
cross-references to
Yeah.
other
Okay,
sections.
so with that said, are you okay doing it online, or do you need printed copies of any of these?
How many thousands of pages?
Single-sided printed copy, only one. Only one copy.
Because if we're working
I would like a
efficiently.
printed copy of our current policy, and the rest I'll review online.
Okay.
And you can also
Be-
view our current online too, when you get on to that access, just so, you know, I'll give you a printed copy, but you can.
So we should, if we're working efficiently, be able to get through these in 2 readings, not 5. And there's just, so I want to try to, I haven't been through a big board policy update with this board. We've been doing them kind of catch as a catch can. So with that said, does every trustee want to read every policy and make comments on every policy? Do we want to, go ahead.
I was gonna say, these are only the policies that have been updated by CSBA after the time that we updated
Right, but
our last
on
policies,
this
so that
list-
are newer. So it wouldn't be all 6,000s, it would be.
I'm talking about this
Yeah, okay,
list.
sounds
So-
good. I just wanted to verify that.
Just for the sake of historical relevance, prior practice was 2 board members sit in the library for a week straight and go through them for the rest of the board, and then come back and say, these are what we recommend and what we don't recommend. And so 2 board members did that before. Personally, I will be reviewing them all, but I'm a policy nerd, that's what I do, so.
And I believe you can make edits to the work in progress on Gamut.
Oh, I'm not
You will
gonna
be
touch
able
it.
to, whomever's.
I'll
and
make
it'll
notes.
I believe I'm still learning it, but that.
If there's a
might-
way to
and
make
it will
comments or
show-
something,
Yeah, I
or whatever,
believe that
that's
there
fine,
is.
I personally will review them, but I think it's a great tool to have some board members go through them for future setups.
I think that we're going to have quite a bit of this to do, so my thinking is maybe we do each time, you know.
Did we call it a policy committee or something?
There was a policy
At one
committee.
time, yes.
It was Diana McDonald and myself first, and then I think it was you and I second.
So I would nominate our new board member tonight, and Gabby.
Gabby.
You're a policy nerd too. You're gonna read them all anyway. You're gonna read them all, so.
All the ones that you guys said were ones that I pulled, so.
Yeah, we're all on the same page. I mean,
You guys are gonna be
But-
so good at it, you're gonna get them all done quick.
no. So I really truly, so I want to say that, because I've done this in other settings, when we're caught up, it's not this hard,
Right,
right? We're just updating them as they come. So we're in another, you know, like,
and
it
that's
just,
what we tried
yeah,
to do last time, was get them all caught up.
right.
And the person left.
And the only way that you can really keep track is through Gamut, because you get the constant updates. So, if, you know, given that we are gonna wanna get these approved in December, I think, for the purposes of FPM, I'm gonna turn to Nicole for a moment. What's your timeline? So we can plan, we can backwards map it.
So,
Sorry, Nicole, can I have you come to the podium?
Thank you.
So there are several that we need updated. For example, like the homeless youth one. There's a list that Kathleen has. So we could give you a shorter list that have to be done in December so that we can upload in January to make the list shorter. Because I think there's more on there than just the ones.
Yes, and we're gonna.
Right, so we could prioritize to chunk it a little bit. But there's probably 5 to 7 that need to be done in December.
What day in December?
Well, our board
Well, our
meeting,
board meeting, you need to,
the 14th, I think.
yeah, I think that's the date.
I just wanna make sure, like, it's not December 5th, because then we gotta put some other things in place.
No, and so we need them approved at the December board meeting, because in January, we're gonna start uploading documents, and all the documents have to be named in a similar convention, and so everything has to be renamed
So
and then
I'm gonna
uploaded.
rephrase the question again. What day are these due for FPM? Because as we're discussing here, and depending on what we decide, we may need 2 meetings. So can we have our first reading at our regular December meeting? And if we need a second reading,
We have a
fit an
special.
emergency meeting in for Christmas? If they're due in January, but, so that's why I need to know really, when are they due, so we can backwards map.
So would this be considered our first reading and then the revisions
that's-
Not my
online will be
first
the
reading.
second, or no? Okay.
My impression is that the board wants
I
more
just-
time to digest these, and that there's, you haven't yet really done a first reading markup. So I'll also say that before I even like to give them to you, I like to mark them up, at least to share with you my thoughts and give them to you with those notes. That would be my typical approach. We don't have to implement it like that this time, because I think we're trying to be efficient. But my recommendation is that we have a meeting before the 14th
Then
to,
Brandon can be with us.
yeah, to go over the key, the ones that Nicole has identified that we need to get done, so on the 14th we can approve them. And I know that that's,
And that's why I'm asking, like,
Yeah.
what is the real date? Because
I would say the
there may be other
14th.
reasons why that's not realistic to have a board meeting before, but if we do have,
Let's look at it.
if they're due on the 20th, then we probably do need to have,
And it's really 5 of them.
Whatever our first
5 to
reading
8 of
is.
them that have to be approved in December, so those ones, I mean, there's not that many of them, so maybe you can get all, maybe the board can get through all of those.
December 7th is wide open.
it could be, yeah, I mean, this
Or
could
split
be,
it,
it
split
could
it
be very
into
simple,
2
but-
sections. Here's what has to be voted on, and
Yeah.
here's what
Yeah.
can take a little bit more time.
And I would say most of those 5 to 8, they're pretty much straight up policy where you can't, they are shalls, they're not mays.
Yeah.
So shouldn't be too many edits on those, because they are coming down straight from law, that this is how homeless education has to be done. Bam, you've got to come up to date.
Send you guys a list of what they are even tonight.
which makes it all the more important that I get a chance to read them.
So, and Kathleen, where is the board in terms of access to Gamut?
I think that they have it, but they haven't.
Has
given me
anyone
their passwords.
tried to
The
sign in?
CSBA hasn't given me their passwords yet. It looks like they're in here, but they don't have passwords, I don't believe. This is all new. with
So
them.
that's, like, when are these actually due?
I say December 14th, because you're gonna have staff out of the office, unable to, come back before, Christmas, and we're trying to process them by January, or get them into Gamut by January. So if we need that, I'm not
We
sure
have a
how
board
else.
conference?
I know, I'm looking at December
have.
7th. Let's do it.
As our first
Yeah,
reading.
I
What's
mean,
December 7th?
it's a Wednesday.
Brandon?
Check my calendar later.
And we can make it a single item, meeting that's just about the policies.
Well, I mean, first, like, when are we gonna be able to get into Gamut? There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle.
Yeah, but I don't think we can answer all of those. We can only plan and try to get you in as soon as possible. There's urgency here. So, I think we should still plan that meeting in December, and if we have to cancel it, it's a special meeting, so we'll cancel it.
December 7th, and I think
What time?
we can
4:30?
get those 5 to 7 board policies to review.
I can send them to you guys tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you, Kathleen.
You can
And-
get us into Gamut tomorrow?
I will try to get you into Gamut tomorrow.
If not, you're gonna have a single-sided page, piece of paper.
So, does 4:30 work? I know, Gabby, that's the time I think that works for you.
Okay, so we're tabling item M6. Is that correct?
Correct, and we're setting a tentative special meeting on December 7th at 4:30.
Okay. Moving on to M7, consideration and possible approval of revised policy 2121, superintendent contract.
And this is just an update of our bylaw.
So I actually asked for this to come forward because during one of the MIG trainings, they talked about, and part of our homework was to go back and look at our policy. And I did not highlight it in here, but there was a section that talked about you couldn't have more than a 12-month period, and our current board policy had 18 months. So I wanted us to make that change. The current contract, superintendent contract said 12 months, but our board policy said 18 months, and I wanted that, which legally it can't say more than 12 months, so I wanted to make that change tonight. That is my presentation of that, but we do have public comment on M7, revised board policy superintendent contract, Angela Cordova.
So you just said that you were just revising months, not giving her a review?
This is changing board policy from, there was a date of 18 months, and legally it cannot be more than 12 months under board policy. And the superintendent's current contract states the 12 months, but our board policy had stated 18 months, and I want it to reflect law and the current superintendent contract. Any other board discussion
I
or
would
questions?
really like to see the current policy so I can track the changes, but I'm happy to make a motion to revise 18 to 12.
Do you have that with you,
But
Kathleen?
I'd like to see everything. Or can you, is this the exact same language other than that?
Termination, in such event, termination of contract, in such an event, the maximum cash settlement that the superintendent may receive, if I'm recalling correctly, but I could be wrong. So please, someone double check.
Print it in just one moment.
Is there, how close is it to the, do you know, to the existing?
I had given
I'm printing it right now.
Kathleen I printed it, but I gave it to Kathleen as a reminder to bring it forward tonight. I mean, this policy here has extra stuff because it has the CSBA notes in it. But, so there is additional stuff in here that's put in by CSBA. All I'm asking is that 18 months be changed to 12 months.
I mean, I have no real issue with this. I'm not comfortable not having the old policy.
Well, this can
To
be the
review.
first reading.
If that works with your timeline, I don't know when. Is this timely, or is it okay to have this be the first reading?
I don't think it's timely. It's just cleaning it up.
It's cleaning it
Yeah.
up so that board policy
By-
matches the
The
contract.
thing is that by law, you can't settle for 18, and my contract does not say 18. So there's no imminent risk that the board would be, having to do something about 18. It's just cleanup.
It's the third paragraph from the bottom is where it says the 18 months on what Kathleen just handed us. Termination of contract.
So my preference would be to have another reading. I do have some questions I need to find, which I might find just taking some time in Gamut. But there's 3 other board members that might approve it tonight, so that's my preference.
Would this be one we could bring up during our special board meeting? Along with the bylaw
So you want to table it? Is that what you're proposing?
That we bring it back at the December 7th meeting and could either we could act on it then based on, you know, edits and review, or could bring it back on the 14th. Sure.
That'd be great for me, but.
So add this to the list if that's the board's preference.
Okay, M8, oral recommendation of superintendent salary and/or fringe benefits. So I'm the negotiator with the superintendent and the board as board president, and I am recommending a salary increase now that we have negotiated contracts and raises for both bargaining units, with a 10% raise for certificated and classified employees and an 8% next year. I'm proposing a 5% increase to the superintendent's salary for 1 year. And that would make step 3, it would be retro to July 1, 2022, making step 3 $214,045. And that would, as I said, retro effective July 1, 2022. And I also propose cleaning up the benefits language. There's no substantive changes, but currently the superintendent matches certificated employee management who follow certificated, or excuse me, who follow classified staff benefits, but it's just actually calling it out. Before there was a number, and so now it's the contract. The current language says that the contract may be extended based on a positive evaluation with board action. So the superintendent did have a positive evaluation this year. So my recommendation would be to add a year to the contract, which would extend it through the 2024-25 school year. So that's my recommendation. M8, there is public comment. First person is Renee Duvander.
Gabby needs to turn her mic on when she talks, or speak closer. It looks like it's on. I see the red light. Now it's off. So that's on. So apparently you just need to speak closer to it. Yeah.
It doesn't
I don't
sound
think
like
it's
picking up.
maybe. What if we swap it with Seth's?
Yeah, it wasn't picking up.
Good at turning it on. There we go.
Oh, we can hear you now.
So we're gonna stay here to redo it? Just kidding. Thank you.
Okay. Connected with the community via text messages. Okay. I have been struggling with the salary discrepancies within our district. When our teachers settled with the district for 10% in competitive salaries with neighboring districts, I personally was impacted by the district finally sharing the costs of covering my family's health insurance expenses. I'm so grateful for where I am today. I do think we still need to make some improvements on the beginning teacher salaries, but even more importantly, I believe we are doing a disservice to our classified employees. I was disappointed that the classified employees settled for the same 10% as teachers. I fear that they were taken advantage of by the district, which is more fiscally literate and educated. 10% of their $17 an hour job is only a $1.70 raise. I have several students who are making more than that as their hourly pay before tips. We have so many vacant classified positions, but we don't pay enough to attract anyone to the job. We should have offered them a dollar amount that raised them to a more competitive wage. Then to suggest that the superintendent get a 5% raise, 5% of nearly $200,000, that's double what you gave the teachers, and 10 times, or excuse me, not quite 10 times, but it's about 8 times what you gave your custodians. By agreeing to this raise, to this amount, what you are telling all of us is that her work and her performance is worth that much more than our work is.
Next name to be called upon is Angela Cordova.
I'll try to keep my comments neutral and logical, as I believe they will allow everyone to understand and relate without bias. When Jeremy Decker left our district for a new position, he left us in a great place. We had more money and more programs than ever before. We had staff that was positive and wanted to be here. We had happy kids that felt supported and safe. Now you fast forward 2 years, we have staff fleeing the district, teacher shortages, several legal battles, families leaving the schools as fast as they can because their kids don't feel safe or aren't being taught. Hundreds of thousands of dollars wasted, and a completely divided community. The only factor that changed is McLean. She's proven that, even though she has hired a couple of good people and made sure to be prepared for when the COVID nightmare was over, but she's not a leader. She has completely allowed the district to fall apart worse than I've ever seen. She even admitted tonight she's stressed out. We're all stressed out. Life is stressful. Get over it. You make more money than most people in this room. And to get an increase is a slap in the face to all these people that sit in the rooms and deal with these students day in and day out. You don't deserve a raise. You don't even deserve what you make now. You've torn apart our district to support your own narcissistic ideals, and that isn't fair to our community or the children who live here. At the rate you're going, you will be financially destroyed and have you will have a very low enrollment within the next year. We're already declining. Our enrollment's declining. I gave you the numbers earlier. You'll have no teachers, nobody applying, and we'll have a black eye that will take decades to recover from at the hands of McLean. She hasn't even worked any other district for more than 2 years. They didn't want to renew her contracts, but good old Cloverdale does. Betha has worked very hard to dismantle all that was good here in Cloverdale Unified, to try and make her own name known. But Betha, her way doesn't work, which is why she has been to so many different districts. Now we are all here wondering and asking, when is the board going to realize it's time to go in a different direction? When are you going to cut bait, lick your wounds, and show the families of Cloverdale that you have the best interests in mind for them, not Betha? Please stop paying her more and giving her raises for an unsatisfactory job performance, and don't extend a contract for someone the teachers and students don't want here and don't respect. And by the way, who's the boss here? Is it you or Betha? Think about that.
Name is for MA is Renee Tierney.
Hi, I'm Renee again. I'm concerned about the number of people that I have spoken to who have their children out of our district. Some of them, my neighbor, for example, has their son on home instruction. There's a lot of people and a lot of families that are leaving Cloverdale District. Maybe the family's not leaving, but the children are. I really feel like what the previous people said, I agree with. I think that maybe when the new board is here, that would be the time to consider this and not right now. There's too much turmoil and too much unknown to deal with this right now. So I'd suggest waiting. You're waiting on some of those other items. So it seems like that would be a wise thing to do as well. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to M9. Consideration and possible approval revised superintendent employment agreement. So this is where the board would discuss my oral recommendation. But before we do that, there is public comment, so I will go ahead and call that before board discussion. The first person that's present here is Blasey.
I was going to comment on M8 and M9, but it's kind of together. Is that fine?
Yeah.
It's just, okay. I'm Liz Blasey. I think a lot of my concern has to do with, you talked about a positive evaluation, and I'm curious as to where that evaluation came from, because I haven't heard, I don't want to discount all the positive things going on in our school, because I know we have some really amazing principals right now, and they're doing a really, really good job. I know we have amazing staff, but I feel like they're not being supported. Like Renee said, I feel like they're not getting listened to. And when you talk about these raises, and the staff is making Superintendent McLean look good now, but the things that have been asked for to be put in place, like resource officers and cameras and all the things that are helping make things better now, have been asked for. And I feel like part of it is a little too late for the people that had issues. I'm talking about the bullying issues. I'm talking about last year still, yes, because we still have to deal with that. I feel like a broken record because I feel like I'm coming here over and over saying the same thing. Our schools are slowly getting back on their feet, but I don't think that it's because of Superintendent McLean's leadership, because I feel like that leadership got us where we are. That's why we're having issues with staffing. And I feel like this is stuff that we need to address before we make a drastic decision like this. Thank you.
The next person is, for M9, is Renee Tierney. Next person is Angela Cordova. She left. And there was a public comment submitted to the board that has been distributed to all the boards, so you had time to read that ahead of time. So we will take that into consideration as well. And she's not here. It's for the board, so I'm.
For it to be read by you. Yes. That's what I understood.
And she doesn't have to read it.
Can I read it? Even though it's public comment? With the public comment here? I think she thought you were going to read it, that's what I understood, because she couldn't be here.
What would the trustees' pleasure be?
If somebody's not here for public comment, they're not here to give public comment. But how would you like to handle it?
I would say we read the public comment since it was something that was submitted, and I know that in the past we have received and have also read items that have been written, sent to us.
There have been things read sometimes. Most of the time, you have to come and do public comment.
In other words, we're being inconsistent and we need to make a policy on it. So,
My suggestion is that you read it and then the board clean up its policy, because the board doesn't have the expectation or requirement to read public comment aloud for people who aren't here. But because we haven't been consistent, for full transparency, I suggest reading it.
So if you'd like, I'll read it.
Please. Can you go to the podium, though?
Yep. Can I borrow your copy? I don't see a name on it.
It's submitted by Jessica Chavez.
Okay, so Jessica Chavez. I never imagined having to fight so hard for the future of our schools and students in the Cloverdale Unified School District. I'd like to thank the school attorney and board president, Jackie Garrison, for confirming the lack of action on behalf of our superintendent in regards to safety. Even after the attempts to address safety issues in March and April of 2022 failed, no action was taken by our superintendent from May 16, 2022 to June 9, 2022. When concerned parents contacted her directly about the insufficient supervision, the mishandling of threats of violence, failures to comply with CUSD anti-bullying policies and procedures, and failures to comply with California Ed Code 48900 and possibly others, which is against the law. Her lack of attention and failure to comply with her very own policies and procedures led to children being harmed, resulting in lawsuits against the school district. Board President Jackie Garrison, thank you for your email on November 8th, confirming that our superintendent stands by her decisions and supports the mishandling of events that led to the existing lawsuits, future lawsuits, and possible involvement of the Office of Civil Rights against our district. With current satisfaction of her performance at 30% district-wide, a termination for cause due to, quotes, to unsatisfactory performance, end quote, as stated in her contract is long overdue. Thank you, school board, for finally listening to our concerns and lack of faith in her leadership.
So I would just like to comment or respond to that. After receiving this, I did reach out to our attorney, and neither her or I have ever made statements that are referenced in Ms. Chavez's public comments. I also did, in the email response on November 8th, I did not confirm that the superintendent stands by her decision and supports mishandling of events. So, for the record, that is not accurate. So, with that, that is all public comment. So we will go into board discussion if there is any questions or discussion about my recommendation regarding the superintendent employment agreement. There was three things: salary, benefits, and the term. Benefits was to clean up the language. Nothing is changing there except for the language cleanup. The term is adding an additional year, which, based on the positive evaluation of the board, it would be to extend it and to add a 5% increase retro to July 1. And if you do look at the Sonoma County superintendent salaries, average median, like ours, the salary is, the average is $231,000 and $226,000. In similar sized districts, it's $222,000 is the average. So if we were to have to go and find another superintendent, we would be paying at least $230,000. And
Just looking at comparisons, how do our, and you may not have this answer off the top of your head, how do our CSEA salaries compare to other districts? I think it's comparable.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious.
And I know from audience, we've looked before at every numbers and average, taking out highs and lows. So, say Betha quits, she's terminated, like you said, people don't like it and they say, we're just little old Cloverdale. No, we're not. People just do not want to realize that it's the real world. And that's what you would be paying, regardless of the discrepancies of other units. That's what superintendent costs.
Thank God for Mississippi, or we'd be last, but the state does not put nearly enough money into education. That our CSEA employees should be paying more. I mean, what does McDonald's pay? Probably close or more. But that is the level that we're funded at. That's the going rate. Those are what the salaries are for those jobs. Same with teaching. Teachers are certificated, and the same with superintendents. And just to be clear, those numbers that President Garrison gave us, they did throw out the highest and lowest of all the unified districts in the county, and that's the range from 226,000 to 231. And then looking at districts throwing out the highest and lowest with 800 to 2,000 students, they're within $20 of each other. So 222,500 is the average salary of similar sized districts too.
And many operate with me too. And, you know, that would be 10% and 8%. So this isn't even nearly what some districts do as far as superintendent increases. Can't disagree with some of the